There we are. We are live. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our special council meeting scheduled for today, Monday, July 20th, 2026. We're starting at 5:33 p.m. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Mayor Karen Cunningham.
Present.
Vice Mayor Mark Meriter.
Present.
Councilmember Patrick Fiore.
Present.
Councilmember Steve Cody. Here. Councilmember Marsha Matson.
Here.
Quorum is met.
Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Fiore for invocation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And if we could all bow our heads in prayer. Tonight's reading is from St. Luke, chapter 11, verse 23 to 24. Blessed are the eyes which see the things that ye see. For I tell you that many prophets and kings have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. Amen.
Thank you. If I could get everybody to please stand. And Mr. Kreischer, would you lead us in the pledge? To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wonderful. With that, we will take requests, petitions, and public comments. We have 5 items on tonight's agenda, but this would be for items not on the agenda.
Thanks. Steve Kreischer, 18201 Southwest 98th Avenue. This month has been a pretty productive month for showing just how badly the legal parking is. On 183rd Street, we've had 3 serious wrecks. One of them, a resident coming out of their driveway, got hit by a speeder on 183, ending up into the Vista building, over the parking, over the sidewalk, over the hedge, into the cracking the glass on one of the units. Followed a couple weeks later, we had a 98th Avenue, 183rd person at the stop sign, blinded by the illegal parking on the corner across from Vista where the trucks have been there, right with bumpers hanging out over right away, no line of sight off of the speeders coming off of Eureka. Got hit, ended up in the property owner's fence there south of me. 2 days after that, we had an accident on 98th Avenue Road, 183rd, excuse me, where a westbound car hit another car, and the westbound car was driven into 2 legally parked cars and the parking spaces head on. This is all a result of improper planning, number one, where we're not having enough parking for these mixed-use facilities for people to park their cars, especially on 98th Court there with a bend and 183rd. We have loading, unloading, we have parking, we have people get out, leave their cars unattended, no hazard lights, nothing. There's no enforcement. But whenever you go down 183rd, you'll always see at least one car sideswiped, parked in the legal parking spaces there at the curb. It's just an ongoing, continuous problem, and it's because we are not providing enough parking requirements for these projects. I came home from breakfast Friday and I had rooms to go taking up 98th Avenue, had 2 AC trucks and a car parked in front of my gate so that you could narrowly get through 98th Avenue, much less into my gate. And they were all for the townhouse projects. It's this overflow into the neighboring properties is getting really bad. And when you pull up tonight to the meeting and you look out into I call it the mud pit out there, parking is a serious issue, but yet we have what's it called? The Miami Parking Authority is the only one benefiting from their contract because we have all these empty street legal parking spaces that are not being utilized now because nobody wants to pay to park. So we need to revisit this parking situation before somebody gets seriously hurt. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, very good. Very good. With that, we'll move into ordinances for first reading. With Yes, I'm so sorry that you told me that right before the meeting.
One public comment was submitted by form by Kelly Willis, residing at 8460 Southwest 180th Street in Palmetto Bay. Good evening, Palmetto Bay. I would like to ask and encourage our village attorney, John Quick, to seek attorney fees from Al John Farquharson. The judge dismissed Al John's case against our village with bias. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. All right, we have 3 ordinances for first reading. The first one is item 3A. Would somebody move it?
Move it.
Is there a second? Madam Clerk, can you please read the item?
Item 3A, an ordinance of the Village of Palmetto Bay, Florida, creating Section 20-7 Fee Waiver Program, Transparency and Fiscal Accountability, relating to village fee waivers, establishing requirements for standardized cost accounting, disclosure of the full cost of fee waivers, and annual reporting, requiring disclosure of cumulative annual support provided to each organization, directing the manager to report to the village council with recommendations regarding annual program caps and recovery of direct costs. This ordinance is sponsored by Councilmember Marsha Matson and is being heard on first reading.
Thank you. Public comment? Madam Clerk, you have one.
One comment was submitted by form by Kelly Willis, 8460 Southwest 180th Street, Palmetto Bay. I oppose item 3A. That's the end of her comment.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Matson.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening. I guess it's evening, almost evening. Mayor and Council, this ordinance is about good financial information. It is not about eliminating fee waivers. It is not about criticizing nonprofit organizations. It is about understanding the true cost of a village program before we make policy decisions. Over the past several months, I requested and analyzed the village fee waiver records, and I appreciate the staff's work, especially Director Carmona's help in assembling that information. The data revealed several important findings. First, from February 2023 through May 2026, the village approved 723 fee waivers with a reported value of approximately $243,000. Administering those waivers also required approximately 2,544 staff hours with an estimated personnel cost of more than $46,000. Together, that represents nearly $290,000 in known public subsidy before considering maintenance, utilities, custodial services, security, insurance, depreciation, and wear and tear on village facilities. Now, this is a significant public investment. Second, a relatively small number of repeat recipients account for a substantial share of the program. The 10 largest recipients receive more than 60% of the total value of all fee waivers. Many organizations appear year after year, demonstrating that this program often functions as continuing operational support for them rather than one-time assistance. Third, organizations located outside of Palmetto Bay receive slightly more total subsidy than organizations based within the village. I'm not suggesting that this is right or wrong, but I do believe the council and the public should know where taxpayer-supported benefits are going. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, the reported value of the fee waivers is not the actual cost of the program. Today, we generally count only the rental fee that was waived and the staff. We do not consistently calculate the cost of maintenance, utilities, custodial services, security, insurance, or the long-term impact of using village facilities. In other words, we know what we forgive in rental charges, but we do not know what the program actually costs the taxpayers. I believe that this is the most important issue revealed by this analysis. Good financial decisions require complete financial information. This ordinance simply fills that gap. It requires the village manager to develop a standardized cost accounting methodology so that every fee waiver is measured the same way. It requires annual and monthly public reports showing the cumulative value of fee waivers by recipient and by facility. Right now, what we get is just the manager's report in which discrete requests are fulfilled month by month, but we don't have anything that shows the cumulative value by recipient or by facility. This ordinance requires disclosures of each applicant's cumulative annual support so the council can see the complete history rather than considering each request in isolation. It asks the manager to recommend whether there should be an annual budget for the program and whether certain direct costs should be recovered. These recommendations will come back to the council for future discussion. This ordinance does not establish a cap. It does not reduce funding. It does not eliminate fee waivers. These would all be future policy decisions if the council ever chooses to consider them. Today, I am simply asking for better financial information. It took me over a year to collect this information. As we begin another budget season, that information is especially important. Our village faces increasing costs for public safety, litigation, insurance, and other essential services. Every discretionary expenditure should be understood completely. Fee waivers are public expenditures. They should be measured, reported, and reviewed with the same care as every other expenditure of public funds. Transparency is not anti-nonprofit. Accountability is not anti-nonprofit. Knowing the full cost of a program is simply good government. Now, every family balances its budget. Every business measures its cost. Local government should do the same. I respectfully ask for your support on this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take questions. We'll start with Vice Mayor and just come on down. I saw your hand up as well, Councilmember Cody. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Looking through your exhibit on this item, it appears that staff already prepares, I guess, staff time spent on this item. I'm wondering if either the manager or the parks director can speak to, I guess, the calculation of that and what goes into that, and also just overall, just to answer, this is already standard practice in terms of the calculation that we're seeing here?
Director, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we currently have established a calculation for staff. The only time we use it is when it's outside of the normal hours of operations for the facility that's being requested for a fee waiver. It's an average of $17 per hour per one staff member times the number of hours for the requested fee waiver. 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after is added.
So by the sounds of it, your office is already doing this calculation, and it's what's in front of me is what you just said in terms of the actual staff time that you just said with the $17 an hour per staffer.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Cody?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I think
This question goes. I beg your pardon. How about now? Yep. Oh, by the way, Viva España. Okay. This question goes to the manager. Councilwoman Mattson spoke of $290,000. Is that money where we have written checks for $290,000?
No, it is not.
So let's take the gazebo in Coral Reef Park. Coral Reef Park only operates during hours when the park is open. If someone wants to use that and we do a fee waiver for it, do we ordinarily bring on extra staff to service that fee waiver use?
Not ordinarily. And I think I've brought this up before. The best way to visualize the cost to the village is not a direct cost either in either a check, as your first question was, or in direct employee costs. It's an opportunity cost, the way an economist would view it. For example, if we provide a fee waiver for a nonprofit to use the gazebo at Coral Reef Park, then the gazebo would not be available for a rental should another entity want to rent it at the same exact time that the fee waiver is for. If the park is open, the cost in terms of labor and other expenses are incidental to the operation of Coral Reef Park as it's currently staffed. So it's not to say there's no cost, but I would, again, just to visualize it, I would recommend that the village council residents view it as an opportunity cost.
And taking a facility like Thalata Estate, where we make it available to nonprofits, has there ever been, in your experience, an occasion where we bumped off a paying user to make room for a not-for-profit and a fee waiver?
I'm not aware of that, and the Parks Director is shaking her head no for the record as well.
Okay, so this $290,000 is not an out-of-pocket amount that this is costing the village, correct?
There are, and I want to be very clear, especially if we're talking about Thalata, there have been cases where due to an after-hour event, the village did incur a direct cost. I don't want to say that none of these are direct costs, but the vast majority of them, the cost to the village in terms of labor and other expenses are incidental to the operation. If someone is wanting to do a seminar at Thalata during the normal working hours, that's a good example of it being an incidental expense. Thalata's already open, the employee or employees are already there. Whatever additional work they needed to do to open up the room and check it at the end for cleanliness is incidental to the normal expense that employee would have incurred that day anyway. I think that's what your question was. I hope
Right.
I answered. Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. No, okay. All right, discussion. Yes, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I support this item. I think it's a good idea. At least from a baseline, we're already doing this work of the calculation here. So to me, if we're just going to be able to budget what's available and essentially deduct from what's in that calculation and set a budget for it, I just think that's responsible budgeting so that we have control over how much in terms of fee waivers we're giving out. So I think it's a good idea. The other thing I would also point out from an operations standpoint is looking at our budget from 2020 and seeing the positions that we had in Parks and Recreations then versus now, there's actually been a growth in terms of FTE equivalents. So it's not like staff time is free. I mean, obviously, the Parks Director mentioned it was about $17 an hour, but those staff, there's an opportunity cost, as the manager said, to being able to use that staff for other functions. So to me, I think this is a responsible move. I support it and hope my colleagues will vote for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Fiore?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to speak in a general term here, and I understand the intention of Dr. Mattson, but I think it potentially could go beyond what is asked here. And I know you put a lot of time into this, Dr. Mattson, but as our Vice Mayor would say, I have a philosophical difference, and really, which is this. I believe that the benefit to the community outweighs the fiscal benefit, if any, to the village. And I say this because I can go back, it was 14 years ago, October 1st of 2012, where the council I was on at the time passed this fee waiver ordinance that I sponsored, unanimously actually. And if I didn't thank them then, which I'm sure I did, I think, I'd thank them now. That was former Mayor Stanzik, former Vice Mayor Brian Pariser, former council person Howard Tendrick, and former council person Joan Lindsay. It did pass unanimously. I think it's worked well for 14 years, and I don't want to pull the rug out under any of our not-for-profits, especially when they only have 100 days left here. It's what I firmly believe in. Now, a new council comes in. Of course, it's their prerogative to move any which way they want to on this. I would actually hope they keep this ordinance from 14 years ago in place, but I'm not going to be supporting it for that reason. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead.
All right. Listen, we can argue all day long or talk all day long about how the lot is used or how the fellow room is used. That's not what this one is about. This one is about is getting a handle on our expenditures. And we're in a budget crunch right now. I think this is a very appropriate thing to talk about, how we really need to look at where we are spending money. The major argument that's going to be coming up in the budget workshop we're going to have is that we're putting a lot of money into things for quality of life. Well, how much money do you want to spend on that for quality of life? Well, this helps us get a handle on how much it costs. Right now, we don't really know in terms of maintenance, utilities, insurance, depreciation, wear and tear. We have no idea. My calculation, which I didn't put in the ordinance, was approximately 19% of the costs that we're not taking into consideration. Now, that's a leak in our budget, and what I'm calling it for is for the manager to examine that and see whether we want to plug that by perhaps, I'm not saying this should happen, but perhaps by charging some fee for that. We should also look at the fact that the 10 organizations are taking up 60% of the fee waiver. They're using it time after time. I'm not going to name them, but I think we should look at that. Should there be a maximum of how much an organization, how much in money or time an organization can use it? Right now, this information is extremely difficult to find for the average resident. In fact, I had to spend a year gathering all this information. So I think it's just important for being financially accountable and transparent to be able to do this. And I'm not saying what the final disposition should be, but I think we need to know if we're a responsible village that watches our spending. So I can see I'm probably not going to get support. I don't know, the mayor hasn't given any opinion, but I do hope that it is supported. This is simply an accountability, transparency measure. We should know where our money is going. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't make comments because I think everybody already knows where I stand. Very good. With that, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll? This is an ordinance.
Councilmember Marsha Matson,
Yes.
Mayor Karen Cunningham,
No.
Councilmember Patrick Fiore,
No.
Councilmember Steve Cody,
No.
Vice Mayor Mark Meriter.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The item fails to pass, 3-2 vote. Item 3B, would somebody move that?
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, can you please read the item?
Item 3B, an ordinance of the Mayor and Village Council of the Village of Palmetto Bay, Florida, relating to public safety, creating the Palmetto Bay Public Safety District as a dependent special district pursuant to Section 189.02 Florida statutes, amending Chapter 26 of the Code of Ordinances by creating Section 26-1. This ordinance is sponsored by Vice Mayor Mark Meriter and is being heard on first reading.
You have one comment by form? Very good. And then public comment?
Kelly Willis, 8460 Southwest 180th Street, Palmetto Bay. I oppose item 3B. That's the end of her comment.
Thank you. Folks that are here?
Chrysler, 18201 Southwest 98th Avenue. Excuse me. Related to what I said earlier on this police situation, I think the idea may work if we had our own police department. We do not. We are receiving a contracted service, and we have no control over the contract amount, basically. And I don't know of any one year that the police were not given 100% of what they needed through our budgeting practices now. In fact, the manager brought up something at the meeting about a $500 savings, that if we were in this special taxing district situation, that $500,000, I think I said $500,000 surplus for the contract budget would not have gone back into general fund like it apparently was able to be used to do. This is something that may be good if we have our own police force that we can control. And the other thing is, I do not believe that our police department usage is properly following, enforcing our ordinances, our legal and safety issues like the traffic and parking situations and other incidents. Yes, we have a very low crime rate, if any at all, but that's not proactive. That's a result of they do a good job after the crime. We need to not, in my opinion, not put this in place that guarantees them 100% and then we don't get anything back if they don't use it. They have not had a problem so far. Let's don't create one. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close that, and I'll turn it over to Vice Mayor Mark Merwitzer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. After having conversations with both our police major and also representatives of the Police Benevolent Association, I think it would be best to give this item some more time to work on and also to address, especially in the legal context and also in the context of the November ballot issue. So I would seek deferral to the September 14th, 2026 regular council meeting for this item. That's my motion.
Okay, there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion of moving the item to September 14th, is that what I heard?
Regular council meeting in September.
Regular council meeting in September. Any discussion on that? All right, it's an ordinance, so why don't we call the roll on the motion, please?
Vice Mayor Mark Merwitzer,
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Cody,
Yes.
Councilmember Patrick Fiore,
Yes.
Mayor Karen Cunningham,
No.
Councilmember Marsha Matson.
Yes.
The item, the motion passes 4-1, moving it to the September 14th regular council meeting. Is there anything else that we need to do for that?
Nope.
Thank you. Very good, very good, thank you. All right, next item is 3C. Would someone move that?
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, can you please read item 3C?
Item 3C is an ordinance relating to the operation of micromobility devices and electric bicycles, amending Code of Ordinances of the Village of Palmetto Bay by creating Section 21-1 to establish regulations for the safe operation of micromobility devices, to provide for pedestrian safety, operator training, and enforcement, and to authorize interlocal agreements. This ordinance is sponsored by Vice Mayor Mark Merwitzer and is being heard on first reading.
Very good. I see we have one person to speak to the item, and do you have one comment as well by form? Oh, two people.
Yes, I'm generally in support of this item, but,
Name and address, sir.
oh, sorry. Eric Tolberg, 7884 Southwest 179 Terrace, Palmetto Bay. There's a few things that need to be clarified. One is there is something I call a personal mobility scooter that does not fit in any of the definitions in Florida Statute 316-003. That's the state of definitions. And in my email, I sent a copy of that Florida statute. There's a device called a personal mobility scooter that is used by the elderly but not necessarily disabled to get around like an electric wheelchair. It has a seat and 3 or 4 wheels, and is usually less than 26 inches wide, so it can fit through a door. They're generally allowed where electric wheelchairs are. The big problem is that many electric two-wheel vehicles sold as electric bicycles are actually electric motorcycles that's greater than 1,500 watts or 2 horsepower that require a motorcycle license, or electric mopeds that's 1 to 2 horsepower and have cranks and require a regular driver's license. It's very important that we have a rule where all such vehicles sold in Florida are labeled as not legal on public streets without appropriate registration and licensing. This is a problem that's statewide. It needs to be handled at the state. I realize we can't do anything on it, but we certainly can make a point of telling our representatives that this needs to be changed. Until that can be done, we need to work out a way for the police to determine which of these vehicles are an electric bicycle, i.e. less than 1 horsepower or 750 watts, and which are e-motos or electric dirt bikes. And they'll have to look at all kinds of things on the bicycle because we don't have a tag system. So it's got to have to be worked out of how we're going to do this. But I think the idea is great, but we really need class 1, 2, or 3 tags to show what the vehicle is. Otherwise, we need to work with the police to figure out how we're going to keep these 50 or 60 mile an hour electric bikes off the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Steve Kreitzer, 18201 Southwest 98th Avenue. For similar reasons to the previous item, first of all, we don't need another ordinance. This sounds more like an aspirational effort because enforcement is going to be ridiculous on this. You just heard a lot of questions about the definitions and what ifs and things, but we have other problems already in existence like 4-wheel ATVs running around that are not enforced. They are definitely illegal to be on the street. They're not inspected, they're not lighted, they're not tagged, they're not even licensed drivers. So enforcement is the thing that's going to prevent this from being realistic. We don't need unnecessary ordinances, in my opinion. We got too many already. And the definitions, and then the suggestion that these shouldn't be on the street, where are they going to go? My neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks, and they're not legal on sidewalks either. So where are they going to be used? So you have a whole lot of definitions, planning, enforcement methods that are going to need to be planned out before you make this law, I hope. Thank you.
We have one comment by form.
Kelly Willis, 8460 Southwest 188th Street, Palmetto Bay. I strongly oppose item 3C. End of comment.
Thank you. All right, Vice Mayor, it's all yours.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking Major Rodriguez, Village Manager Nick Morano, and also our Village Attorney John Quick for their collaborative effort on crafting this ordinance. This is an incredibly important step forward for our village because over the past year or two, I have heard repeatedly from residents who are concerned about fast-moving e-bikes or other motorized devices on our sidewalks and shared use paths. People should be able to walk through Palmetto Bay without worrying about being struck, forced off a sidewalk, or being surprised by a heavy motorized device moving past them at an unsafe speed. At the same time, I also don't think the answer is to simply just ban these devices altogether. I think e-bikes and scooters can be useful, and they're something that a lot of young people in our village enjoy. And I think part of being a kid is just going outside, riding around, and having fun. And the purpose then of this ordinance is to establish reasonable rules so that these devices can be enjoyed safely and responsibly. So going through what the ordinance does, the ordinance sets a speed limit of 10 miles per hour on sidewalks and 15 miles per hour on shared use paths. It also requires anyone under the age of 16 who operates a Class 2 or Class 3 e-bike to complete safety training with a parent or guardian. And the important part here is the parent would actually sign an acknowledgement confirming that the family understands the risks and responsibilities involved in using an e-bike. And to me, the whole purpose of this ordinance, more than anything, is to have an educational component to the families within the village of Palmetto Bay. Because so many people hear the term e-bike and understandably think that they're purchasing something similar to an ordinary bicycle with just a little bit of assistance. But some of these devices are a lot heavier, faster, and a lot more powerful than a traditional bike. A child may be operating one without either the child or the parent fully appreciating the potential consequences of using one. So this ordinance is also substantively similar to the ordinance that was adopted by Pinecrest. I would also like to explore with us, hopefully, since Pinecrest also has that training requirement within their ordinance, to work perhaps on a regional training program where you can go to Pinecrest City Hall or even Palmetto Bay Village Hall as well to get your training as well. So I think families across South Dade are confronting this exact issue, and I think that we should adopt what has already seemed to be making progress in Pinecrest. And also, finally, I want to be clear, I also don't envision this becoming a heavy-handed enforcement operation. I think the objective, again, is education first. I don't expect officers to conduct routine checkpoints to stop every young person on an e-bike. The hope with this would be to primarily focus on dangerous conduct, like you see people doing wheelies all the time on e-bikes, or the reckless riding, or coming near pedestrians or other cyclists, or the areas where we have repeated complaints over this behavior. So this ordinance gives us that balanced approach, and it also preserves the ability of families and young people to use these devices. And I think the number one responsibility of this council is the safety of our residents, and this ordinance advances that purpose and responsibility. I hope to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney.
Yeah, just one point. In between when the agenda went out and well, I was going to say tonight, but it was really a couple weeks ago when we had our meeting, there were some tweaks that the attorney's office made for legality purposes. There's a red line that you guys all have in front of you. So we worked with the sponsor on this, and to my understanding, he's comfortable with those changes. So assuming he is with that, we would ask if you consider the red line version as an amendment when considering this.
I'll move the red line version.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you, Mr. Quick. All right, questions for the Vice Mayor? Councilmember Cody.
Thank you. You spoke of training costs or training. What's the cost of that going to be for the village?
I'll defer to our village manager, but my understanding is it would be pretty minimal. For example, in Pinecrest at the moment, they're maybe having about once or twice a month a training session within their city hall. And if the police are willing and available to do that training, I think it's just part of our general programming. And I also foresee this being available at the different events that we have across the village of Palmetto Bay.
I would agree with that.
Okay, other questions? Councilwoman Matson.
Well, first of all, I think really pedestrians are endangered in this city, and I wish we would build more sidewalks, frankly. However, I think it's a good idea to have some kind of legislation regarding the mobility devices, because I've seen too many wild and crazy drivers of those devices, and I'd like to see them be trained, have some education about it, how dangerous it is for pedestrians and for themselves. A question that I have is, well, I do agree with Mr. Kreischer about enforcement. I see that as the biggest problem, frankly. And so I would like to know do you have any idea who the fine of $250 would go to?
Yeah, so two things. The first, in terms of enforcement, and to address something that one of our residents mentioned in terms of the visual difference, there's actually throttle on Class 2 and Class 3 e-bikes, which is what this ordinance targets. So on a regular, just electric e-bike, that gives you a little bit of pedal assist. You won't even see the throttle, so that's going to be the visual differentiation. In terms of your second question as to who pays, I would defer to our village attorney on that because I'm not fully familiar. And on the enforcement methodology, I'm also happy to defer to our major as well on that.
Yeah, I'm looking up in the statute, it's under the uniform traffic control, so it's going to be set forth in the statute, but I can confirm that, and I'll try to do that before we finish this discussion.
Okay, because the ordinance calls for the enforcement officers are a police officer and also a community service aide. I don't think we have any community service aides. And also code compliance officers. So I think that would go, if a code compliance officer gave a citation, that would go to the village, right? And if a police officer gave the citation, that would go to where citations go, which is to the county and some to Palmetto Bay, correct?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilwoman. To answer your question, if we issue a uniform traffic citation under a state statute, it would be no different than any other uniform traffic citation where there's a portion of the fine that comes back to the village. And Mr. Manager gets a report once a month, I believe, is that he gets a report of the portion of, I don't want to call them earnings, but it is a portion of the fine that comes back to the village.
You know what portion that is?
I can research it for you and tell you exactly how much of each citation, but I think it all depends on what the fine is. Speeding fines, I believe it's more.
It's a percentage?
I believe it is, ma'am.
Okay. Manager, do you know the exact numbers?
I don't, ma'am, but we'll get that number and get it to you and the other members here.
Okay, thank you. And also, a question is, does this include insurance? That the parent, let's say, has to have insurance on the vehicle or on the mobility device?
So I don't think we can regulate that. I'll defer to our village attorney, but my understanding is that because under state law, these are not classified as typical motor vehicles unless it's one of those higher powered, essentially e-motorbikes that you see, those would fall under the same classification as like a regular motorcycle. But for class 2 and class 3, they are under a special designation where the requirements are a little bit different and insurance is not a requirement, which is part of why I wanted to have an acknowledgement because, for example, if your kid's on an e-bike and they go out and hurt someone, they're now potentially looking at a major civil lawsuit against that individual. So having that training involved and just making sure everyone's aware of, hey, you need to be safe and here are the potential consequences if you're not, is part of why I wanted to do this.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Major? All right, thanks, Major. All right, any other discussion? Councilmember Fiore.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think well-intentioned, Mr. Vice Mayor, but I'm going to agree with a couple of the speakers. It's really not enforceable. I really think this is a parenting / common sense item, for lack of a better word. But I will tell you this. This is something, I have heard some of the complaints, and it may be incumbent upon this council to at least maybe ask the manager through some type of directive just to put something on our website to make, I don't know how you would say it, I'd leave it up to everybody here, but just to ensure that parents tell their children or just to tell everyone to be careful when using these e-bikes and be aware of pedestrians. I think something like that issued on our website would be helpful. But I wouldn't vote for the ordinance as is, but there's always a benefit to something, and I think that's something I'd like to see this council do. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, in response, I'm wondering if the concern is, if the enforcement's the concern, would you be comfortable approving something that's similar to what's in front of you here, except instead of, for example, a fine, we essentially do education as the penalty? Especially in this context of obviously we're trying to figure out where the money would go. I think just education in general is a more productive way of handling this problem. So I would defer to you on that, but I think that would be a reasonable way of addressing this issue.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Yeah, good point, but I just think it's too too much government involvement, for lack of a better word, on the whole thing, and it's not something I'd want to put into law. However, again, I think you have brought up a valid concern, a safety issue, and how we can educate the public at a minimal thing, I would think, would just be putting something on our website. I really don't want to, our police already have, there's enough to do without that. I know they would have to respond if there was, God forbid, some incident, but that's as far as I would go. But a good point. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor.
I do have one question. Where will these education sessions take place?
So Pinecrest is currently doing them at Village Hall, at their Village Hall, and then also the idea as well is, I know that the Sheriff's Office has attends, the Parks and Recreation Department has attends at most of our events, so I feel like doing some outreach there would be a good idea. And I also know, historically speaking, I remember seeing some like helmet giveaways in the past as well, so maybe that can be part of that program as well.
So that's something that would be determined by them. You don't stipulate in here.
Yeah,
Who,
it's
what, where,
administratively
when, how.
flexible. Yeah,
Okay.
my preference with ordinances is to leave it as administratively flexible as possible.
So from my perspective, and I travel around the community quite a bit, I think there's a very large number of e-bikes, even in my own neighborhood, and I'm talking little people, little kids, elementary school kids, riding e-bikes. We have issues in our parks as well periodically. I don't know that we've had any recent issue, but I know in the past I've reached out to the manager. We've got kids doing donuts and, in the grass, and then residents will do outreach. It's like anything else, unless you're trained and understand the dangers, which frankly, in a lot of cases, I would imagine young people don't, because I think young people think, hey, we're going to live forever, everything's going to be fine. I think they do pose some issues. I don't think they belong on sidewalks, to be honest with you. But then I don't want kids on streets either with these vehicles. So some kind of training, I'm in agreement with Councilmember Fiore, some kind of training I think is necessary. My concern in some respects, and I guess I'll just ask the manager, is this something that you feel like, given the time constraints, the number of police officers that we have, and I know we have a community policing department, that likely this would, I'm guessing likely it would, I don't want to use the word fall on them, but that it would become a part of their responsibilities either at events or in our neighboring parks. Is that how you envision it?
Well, I'll let the major come up, but for the record, my apologies if that's me. He was shaking his head in the affirmative, so he was agreeing with your statement. Both the major and I are good with this proposed ordinance. Go ahead, Major.
Good evening once again. Madam Mayor, yes, that would be the idea, is that once, if this isn't in fact passed during our discussions with both the Vice Mayor and the village manager, it is to make that training as simple as possible. We would take literature that's already in publication from the state of Florida, from the Department of Transportation, and we would take that literature with those laws that are already written. There's a lot of good information that's already publicly available, and we would take that and make sure that it would be the operators of the micromobility devices. We would just be the mechanism, the delivery mechanism.
And I'm sure it's probably already happening. We are doing some kind of enforcement as it relates to, I know we do golf cart enforcement all the time. I'm assuming we do electric bike enforcement.
Thank you for asking, 100%. The majority of that enforcement, however, is more in the realm of the e-motos, those devices that qualify as a motor vehicle, as a motorcycle. And unfortunately, we had an incident just this past weekend. We really have not had many with the micromobility devices per se, the scooters that everybody sees. It's more so in the realm of the e-motorcycle.
Thank you, thank you. Vice Mayor, I'm going to support the item tonight and likely on second reading. The only thing I would just say, and just, putting it to the record, I'll be gone in 4 or 5 months. I would, maybe for second reading, I don't want to call it a pilot, because I think it's an important initiative, but maybe for second reading, we can add some kind of language that will come back 6 months from now, 7 months from now, whatever you and the manager and the major come up with, and then you all revisit it. Maybe the manager and major give some kind of report, and if there's any tweaking, let's say we have 0 people coming to trainings, I'm trying to, then if there's tweaking that needs to be done, tweak it at that time, because sometimes we pass stuff and it just passes into the night. And so if you're tracking this, I think it's good policy. I, along with several friends here in the village of Palmetto Bay, knew Miss Andrews from Key Biscayne. This was well over a year ago, actually probably 2 years or better now. Super, awful and tragic, not only for Meg, who died, but also for the young man. I don't remember, I feel like he was 11 or 12. He's just a kid. And that's something he'll sleep with and wake up with every single day of his life and his family's life. And, if we can educate, we can't stop every tragedy, but if we can educate people, I think that's definitely an important component, so.
So in
Yes.
responding to that, Mr. Attorney, I believe we can put a sunset clause in the ordinance. I'm happy to put, let's just call it December 31st, 2027 would be the sunset, if that would be appropriate, because that way we have the whole year of 2026 to assess this, and then the council can come back next year and evaluate the effectiveness of the program and make changes as they see fit. So is that something that you'd be open to, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, I don't know, sunset seems severe, right, to me. I'm just saying, I don't know if I'm going to be following it in 2027, but I'm going to leave it to you and Councilmember Cody to do that, and of course the major and manager to do the follow-up. I feel like saying sunset is harsh. I'm not asking you to sunset it. I'm saying, would you put in something at some point to say on such and such in the month of whatever, 6, 8 months from now, I'll be gone. Don't worry, I won't be opining on it. Just that you'll revisit it and say, hey, the major says these, probably want to make these tweaks. The attorney says, hey, we might want to look at this a little bit differently, just to hear something. I don't want you to sunset it. I think it's an important piece of policy, I'll be honest with you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I usually don't chime in, but,
Yes, of course, you may chime.
100 days to chime. Just a suggestion, Mr. Vice Mayor, because perhaps you want to bring this back as a resolution as far as it concerns the educational component at the September meeting, and I will support it. By that, I mean we could, I think as the mayor said, there could be a seminar at Coral Reef Park. The police could pass out the brochures or whatever. Maybe we could do that once every few months, every 3 months, something, just an idea. But if you bring it back as a resolution like that, I would definitely support it in September. Just an idea. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Cody.
Thank you. I think sunsetting would not be a bad idea, because the state of Florida, at least back in the 80s, when I worked with the legislature, we had an entire committee that was chaired by Bill Sadowski, where various parts of the Florida Code were equipped with sunset dates, and it was up to the various legislative committees to take up before the expiration of that to see whether they wanted to keep it intact or not. If Mark wants to make a motion to add that sunset language, I'll second it.
Councilwoman Mattson.
Yes, I think this is a very important piece of legislation. I think we really do need to have some regulation and enforcement on these vehicles. I think they're dangerous. And the major thinks it's a good idea. The manager thinks it's a good idea. It's a good idea. These are the two people who are responsible for it. So I don't think it needs any tweaking in terms of sunsetting. I think that it will have training, as the commissioner mentioned. I think there will be training. I think the police will do that. They will hold sessions for training. So I think it's good as it is. And thank you for proposing it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Is there language out there, I haven't heard of this, but like, is there language where we can revisit in the December regular council meeting of 2027?
Yes, you could put, I don't think you need it in there. I mean, you can just, if this passes on second reading, you can also put a directive that it be to the administration that we revisit it in December 2027 to, provide an update, any potential amendments, tweaks, or anything like that, or repeal, I guess, as well.
I'll make a motion to add that to the ordinance, which is, in the December regular council meeting of 2027, the administration shall make a report as to the trainings provided and enforcement, and all other relevant information related to this ordinance. So that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, and there's a motion and it's been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Sorry. Ordinance, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on the motion that's just been made?
Vice Mayor Mark Meriter,
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Cody,
No.
Councilmember Patrick Fiore,
No.
Mayor Karen Cunningham,
Yes.
Councilmember Marsha Matten.
Yes.
The item, motion passes 3-2. So now we're back on the item as amended. And Commander, I think you're good. Yeah. Thanks. Anything else on this particular item? Do you want to make closing remarks?
I know to quit when I'm ahead.
Okay. Wow, look at this. Tonight we heard quit when ahead, and if the manager thinks it's good, it's good. So I'm going to remember that through the budget workshop. I'm just kidding. That was great. All right, Madam Clerk, when you're ready, if you could call the roll on the item as it has been amended.
Councilmember Steve Cody,
No.
Councilmember Patrick Fiore,
No.
Councilmember Marsha Matten,
Yes.
Mayor Karen Cunningham,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mark Meriter.
Yes.
The item passes 3-2. Thank you. All right, we'll move into resolutions. We've got two, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Are you doing a withdrawal of item B?
I've already withdrawn it.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I still see it.
Yeah, 4B was withdrawn prior to the meeting, but
Thank you.
today it was before the
Okay.
agenda could be.
Very good. So we only have one resolution then. Item 4A. Would somebody move it?
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please read the item?
Item 4A is a resolution requiring enhanced transparency and fiscal accountability for legal services and litigation expenditures, requiring regular public reporting of legal services and litigation expenditures, directing implementation and providing for an effective date. This resolution is sponsored by Councilmember Marsha Matten.
Public comment? Did you have anything?
One public comment was received by form from Kelly Willis, 8460 Southwest 180th Street. I oppose item 4A. End of comment.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. I turn it over to Councilwoman Mattson.
All right, this resolution is for enhanced transparency and fiscal accountability for legal services and litigation expenditures. This is another item that I worked on quite a while. I wanted to bring it because this is one of the main drivers of our budget deficit coming up in our budget workshop, and I think that we need to have more transparent reporting so that people really know what's going on with our litigation expenses. The purpose of this resolution is not to interfere with the village attorney or litigation strategy. It is to provide the council and the public with meaningful oversight of one of the fastest growing expenditures in the village budget. The village reports on almost every other major expenditure. Litigation expenses should receive the same level of transparency. Why is this needed? Well, legal expenditures have increased dramatically, and if the public would like to look at the agenda online, I have a couple of exhibits in here that show how the expenditures have increased. Also, the budget workshop following this meeting will also demonstrate that. The adopted legal budget this year from this fiscal year bears little resemblance to actual spending by year end. For example, during this budget cycle, general legal services were budgeted at approximately $323,576, but now are estimated to exceed $1.1 million, an increase of 248% above budget. Litigation expenses have grown because of the Luxcom litigation, which is approximately half of the expenses, the Palmetto Bay Village Center litigation, the Fairchild litigation, multiple lawsuits involving Councilman Cody, and other legal matters. These costs compete directly with funding for parks, roads, landscaping, recreation, and other village services. Current reporting is inadequate. The village attorney submits monthly invoices, and these invoices generally include the date, the client, the subject, the hours, and the amount billed. But they do not tell the council or residents total spending by lawsuit, cumulative spending by case, expert witnessing costs, consultant costs, e-discovery costs, mediation expenses, outside counsel expenses, and projected remaining litigation costs. Without that information, meaningful budget oversight is impossible. Now, what I'm recommending in this resolution is a monthly legal expenditure report. Each month, the manager would provide a public report showing each active lawsuit for every case, the case name, the purpose of the litigation, the status, and the department involved. The current month expenditures would include the village attorney, outside counsel, expert witnesses, consultants, mediators, investigators, e-discovery vendors, court reporters, filing fees, and all other litigation expenses. Then we would have the cumulative expenditures for every lawsuit, the fiscal year total, and the total spent since litigation began. At this point, let me just do an aside. I've been following litigation expenses since I've been on council for 8 years, and frankly, at this point, I can't even tell you. I can just estimate how much we've spent on it, which I believe is over $1 million. But I cannot really tell you the exact number, and we should know that. So another aspect of this would be a budget comparison. For each case, there would be the budget, the expenditures to date, and the estimated remaining costs. Now, the benefits of this resolution. This report would increase transparency, improve fiscal accountability, allow earlier identification of rapidly increasing legal costs, improve budget planning, help the council determine whether settlement should be considered before legal costs become excessive, and provide residents with a clearer understanding of how litigation affects taxes and village services. Now, why does this matter? Every additional dollar spent on litigation is available for public services. It's unavailable for public services. When legal expenditures increase by hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions, other priorities are affected. We're going to be talking about that tonight, later on in the budget workshop. Fiscal accountability requires not only approving a budget, but also monitoring whether actual expenditures remain consistent with that budget. So I hope you will support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Cody?
Thank you. This is for the manager. I seem to recall that when we passed our current fiscal year budget, there was a decision made to not budget for litigation expenses. Is my memory correct?
Correct.
And so is that one of the reasons why the apparent number between what we set aside for the village attorney at about $300,000 and the amount that we spent total, the village attorney plus litigation expenses, was so much greater?
That is correct.
So it was not that we were not aware that we would be having litigation expenses. It's just that a decision was made to move it off the books. Is that correct?
That's correct. We moved our litigation reserved funding line off the budget for the current year. Correct.
And for the village attorney, in the report that you provide for us at each regular council meeting, you give us a breakdown of what various expenses are generally for your services as the village attorney, and also expenses related to other attorneys at your firm who have worked on items, correct?
Correct. All of my bills are available, and some might be redacted if they're in litigation, but they're all available and they're all public records.
But you also, in those bills, will reference expenses with regard to cases that we have pending or matters, correct?
That's correct. A lot of times, like if, in terms of like using the court reporter, for example, usually what we do is that gets attached to the bill, and actually the court reporter invoice is also attached to our invoice, and that's all included in that, yes, absolutely.
And that's just a pass-through?
Correct, yes.
Okay, you don't charge a markup on that?
No, whatever the invoice we get from the court reporter is, we just send over.
I know a few firms that used to put a little bit of a markup on stuff
We
like
do not do that. We do not offer our own court reporter services. We just send you what they tell us.
All right. And all of that information is included in the report that you provide with us as part of our regular council agenda packet, correct?
Yes, with one exception, the litigation matters are not included in that.
Right.
For attorney-client communication purposes, but they are public records, but they would need to be redacted for litigation, attorney-client communication.
So if we have an active litigation matter, even under this resolution, would we have to redact that information in order to preserve our legal status regardless?
Absolutely, because if you don't, if you could imagine, say we're researching kind of a nuanced area of the law, and if whoever is suing the village finds that out, they would be able to identify what our legal strategy might be, and it's a window into our mind, I should say.
And so the idea that this resolution would give us complete transparency is not something practically that we're going to be able to do, simply because we have to protect the legal position of the village, correct?
Absolutely, I would hope not, because if you were to turn over basically access to your lawyer's minds, I mean, any attorney on the other side would kill for that, I would say. I mean, you would love to have access into your opponent's mind.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Are there other questions?
Respond to that, please.
Sure, and then the attorney has a question, but, okay, you go ahead.
Yes, currently on the manager's reportable checks, the expenses regarding various litigation like Lexcom are reported. So it's not exactly a secret. It is reported. And they're in litigation, so that part of your argument is not true. However, what I'm looking for is a comprehensive overview, because these are individual items that you can't keep track of in terms of how the money is accumulating. And that's the important thing, is people need to know how much these things are costing. And really, it's mystery unless you follow it every month. And even then, it's hard to follow. I don't know how many public records requests I did on this in order to be able to get what I think is the accurate count. It's just not transparent. It's not readily available. It's hard to put together. So really, all this is transparency and fiscal accountability in terms of what is happening with our exploding litigation expenses.
Go ahead.
Does either the village manager's office or the village attorney's office have I feel like in front of us is all of the different cases that we have and also a description of the hours billed, et cetera. I'm wondering, do we already track by case the expenditures that we have?
Yes, my invoices are sent by case. I mean, I do have some that I call general municipal because there's just daily things that come up that you wouldn't plan for, but if it's a litigation matter, there's a number of reasons why we track those by case. Number one, for budgeting purposes and for accounting purposes for the village, but also it's important to do that for litigation purposes because if we're entitled to costs or fees under any, if there's a statutory basis or a contractual basis for fees, you need to be able to justify that in the litigation. So it's there. If you were to do a public records request for all my invoices for X case, we would have to go in and redact some of if it's in active litigation, redact some of that information to avoid revealing our mental impressions, but that would all be available and would be produced pursuant to a public records request.
So it's already being tracked by case and it's already public records requestable, correct?
On that aspect, some of the other things that are being requested are not in that, no.
Of course, and do you make the determination when the public records request comes in, or is it on a as you're giving us the invoices, for example, I believe I saw in one of your attorney's reports, it would probably give a more vague description as to what the actual work was, but I'm wondering what the process is for that.
So the bills are whatever they are. So depending on what it is, if it's, sometimes, if it's a research project on a certain issue, I would include that in there. But that chances are, if there's I just answered your question, in terms of whether it would be produced, would be on a case-by-case basis depending on the public records request, because it would depend if the case is still open and would depend on the actual specific, the specific item. Like if there's an entry that says, telephone call with client about executive session, that's not revealing any mental impressions. Probably, chances are that wouldn't be redacted. But if I went in and said prepare for executive session and listed out a bunch of things I prepared for, that definitely would be.
And I guess to the sponsor, is the intent here to essentially have a report during our meeting where it says, for example, Steve Cody versus Mark Merowitzer? I don't know which one it would be because there's multiple of those, but it'll list that case and then it'll say expenditures and then so on and so forth. For example, we're in a slip and fall case right now and we'd show the expenditures there. Is that the intent to include in the manager's report, just that overall line of here's what was spent per case? And is that something you'd be open to? Because by the sounds of it, yes, there is some attorney-client questions, but to me, as long as it's public record and it's reportable, why not? And it seems like we're already doing that work. Is the intention here to just say, okay, we're spending X amount of money on a slip and fall, we're spending X amount of money in another case, so on and so forth? Is that what you're going for?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for, is something that is transparent and something that people don't have to spend hours digging for and maybe not getting the right information. I mean, it's just putting it out there for the public to see, that's all.
Sure. I mean, so just as a cleanup then, instead of saying no attorney-client privilege information shall be disclosed, I would just add another sentence saying only public records, only information subject to public records request may be disclosed as an addition to your point, just so that essentially if it's public record, we're publishing it automatically as part of our agenda, and if it's not, it's not, and that way we don't have to worry about mental impressions or anything else.
Well, I already have in the resolution on page 2 of 3, line 13, no attorney-client privilege information shall be disclosed.
Exactly. I just want to
It's already in there.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to add one more thing, so that it just has to be public records requestable. That's all. All public records requestable information shall be disclosed.
Okay, I don't see the problem with that.
And I guess the last thing, and just to reiterate, this wouldn't create like, I guess, any administrative hassle because it's already being tracked by case. And I'm wondering, instead of showing all the invoices as well, would it be possible to just show like, for example, slip and fall case, I don't remember, like the person who tripped somewhere on one of our sidewalks, X dollars. Steve Cody versus Mark Merwitzer, X dollars, so on and so forth. Would that be possible?
I mean, that's not what's being required in this. There are administrative requirements like putting together a proposed budget, projecting the remaining litigation costs, and I'll get into that. There's I do have some concerns with this as to how it might be impacting litigation strategy, and I was waiting for you all to finish speaking, and I can address that when I do talk, though.
I'll wait to hear that then. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
Yeah, so I do have some concerns about this in terms of litigation strategy. I do want to just address up front the transparency issue. Everything is transparent here. All of our bills are subject to a public records request. If you do a public records request that says, I would like all legal invoices for X case, you're going to get them all. So it's all there. The issue was the requests that were being made. That's not the request that was being made. The request that was being made was to create documents that did not already exist, and that was what the issue that was being run into. But if you just do a request for all invoices, attorney's fees, whatever else related to, we'll say, the Luxcom case, the village can get it to you. That's not an issue, and obviously we would have to go in through redacted. The concern that I have a couple concerns when it comes to litigation strategy, and I do think that this would impact litigation, notwithstanding what I think is a good-natured intent. The part of, when I talked about wanting to have a window into somebody's brain, if you're an attorney, and on the other side, one of the ways that we know that, or one of the ways that we do get access to it, is by seeing what they request. So if somebody sends a public records request, if somebody sends a request for production, if somebody sends interrogatories, that gives us a little bit of a window into their brain. It may be a smokescreen, it may not be, but it may be substantive, but that gives us a window, your lawyers, a window into that person's brain. And at a very minimum, just at an absolute minimum, we know that they have it, and we know that they might use it. If we are going to be giving this and putting this on the website and giving this to the people that have sued the village up front, your lawyers will not know that that's something that they are looking for. Your lawyers will not know that that's something they might try to use against you. And so it basically is going to take a proverbial arrow out of this council and future council's quiver. As your lawyers, I want you to have as many arrows in your quiver as you possibly can. This would definitely take out an arrow from that quiver because we would not know that they want that information or that they even have that information. The other issue that I see in terms of litigation strategy is, we prepare a budget during the budget season. As was addressed before, that budget was zeroed out for litigation, and that's why there's no surprise that the number does not match up. It's not zero. We knew it wasn't zero at the time because we were in active litigation at the time. But creating a projected litigation cost for each case, number one, is really difficult and really kind of leads you nowhere because litigation takes so many twists and turns that you have no idea what you might uncover, and you might double what the budget cost is, or it might be half because you're able to resolve it much quicker. But when you are asking your administration and you're asking the lawyers to not so much create a budget, but then actively every month project out the remaining litigation costs, that gives information to the people that are suing the village that we don't need them to have. We don't need them knowing this is how much we think it's going to cost any longer. And then they have a window into your mind as a council, or the future council. I guess that, we'll have 3 new people up here soon, but at least as of right now, this set of 5, they'll have a window into your mind of, okay, they're comfortable with that amount, so you know what? I'm going to make them spend more money. I'm going to make this more difficult. I'm going to go out and hire an expert for this so that I can bleed them, and that's going to then, again, have an impact on the litigation strategy and might send you to a result that you would otherwise not go to if it weren't for them having this information or the potential cost of the remaining litigation, because they know what it's going to take to bleed you out. The third issue isn't so much a litigation strategy issue. It's just something I want to remind you all that starting in April, the ADA law as it applies to websites is altering, or it's not altering, it's being brought up to date, I should say. So for cities of our size, starting in April of 2027, everything that goes on the village website is going to need to ensure that it is ADA compliant, which means the village has had to hire, retain experts to make sure that everything is screen reader compliant, things like that. So this is really more of a reminder that everything you put onto the village website, there's a cost to that. I know it sounds easy, just put it on the website, but there's a cost to it. Number one, there's a staff cost to creating these documents, but number two, on the back end, and it's, like I said, it's really not litigation strategy related, but it's something that you all should keep in mind. There is an actual cost that's going to go into that, because you're going to have your compliance folks make sure that everything that is on the website is in compliance, because if not, then we will be sued, or I shouldn't say will be, we will likely be sued for an ADA violation, and attorney's fees do go along with that. So I do have concerns with this, because I think that it gives information to people that are suing the village. The information is frankly there. If they want to ask for it, they can ask for it, just like anybody else can ask for it. But as your lawyer, I would like to know that they asked for it, so that I can be prepared for it and I can make sure that we're ready for it.
Thank you, Mr.
I'd like to
Attorney.
respond to that, please.
Go ahead.
Well, obviously, I don't want your legal mind to be made available to people who are suing us. And if your concern is the budget, anything about budget, I'm certainly willing to delete on page 1 of 3, line 40, and page 2 of 3, lines 1 and 2, which mention budgets. And I'm certainly willing to do that. That was not my intention whatsoever. Now, as I recall, I either ran this by you or by your associate. I really don't remember at this point, because I was putting other things out there to you and you were out of town. But I wish I would have heard this before, because I hate to bring something to council that you object to. I've always worked with you in terms of eliminating it or changing it if you object to it. So I really am disappointed about that.
It's my recollection this was sent to us on the day that it was due, and we were asked to review this for legality, not for actually substantive analysis. That's my recollection. The other ones you did send to us in advance, and we did work with you, but this one came to us at the last minute. It was just a review for form.
All right, so my understanding of this is sending something for legal sufficiency, but that doesn't mean it can't be changed and there can't be negotiation. So that's what I'm talking about. I wouldn't bring something to this council if I knew that you were going to object to it. I really wouldn't. I mean, that's not a good idea, right? Okay. So I would like to amend it. Is that acceptable to you then, to amend it by eliminating page 1 of 3, line 40, page 2 of 3, line 1 and 2, that reference budget?
I mean, it's better. I'll say it's better.
It's better. Okay, so it's better. So I would like to
Second.
make that amendment.
Second.
Okay, discussion or questions on the amendment? Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, what I was getting at earlier is I think it would just be easier to just report the total litigation expenditures, not just from the month and fiscal year to date, but total. From the case was, when the case was first brought on to us or served to us to date, so that we can see the totals. And also, yes, the year to date would be nice as well. And then just have that included as part of the manager's report. And that would just make it very clear if someone wants to find that information, like how much did we spend on a trip and fall, or how much did we spend on something else, we're good. And if someone wants to make the public records request, they're welcome to do that. And I just think it's a lot simpler to do it that way. So I'll support this amendment, and I'll also just be making an amendment to number 1 to say fiscal year to date in totality of the case as well. So that'll be a separate discussion, but that's what I'd like to do.
Question for him?
Okay. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, because right now in the manager's checkbook, items are detailed in terms of litigation expenses, but they're detailed in such a way that there's no way for the public to have the overall view of what's going on. So I think you're talking about essentially what we're doing now, except adding an overall annual or fiscal year to date number. Is
Yeah,
that what you're asking?
Yes, and just make it really simple. Like, we already do this work, we already have it available. Instead of having a member of the public have to essentially crunch up the numbers on Excel or whatever else they use, as part of the manager's report, we'll show the year-to-date and also the total expenditures for the case, on a case-by-case basis, and that's all we're adding to the report, which is what I'm hoping for as well. So, I'll support the amendment.
Okay, did you propose the amendment?
Well, we have an amendment, so I guess we can incorporate that into the amendment that I already made for the budget.
Okay, I think we're going to need some clarity on what it is.
The motion on the floor is eliminating line 40 of page 1 of 3 and eliminating lines 1 and 2 of page 2.
All right, and also, I want to incorporate the suggestion of the Vice Mayor. Can you read that back?
Essentially, be striking the entire resolution except for line 39 on page 1 of 3, and then also at the same time, adding the words and total litigation cost to line 1 as well that you have there. So essentially what we're doing with this item is to direct the manager to go ahead and publish a total for litigation across the board on a case-by-case basis, and then that'll be part of the report as well.
Right, that's my amendment.
Can you read the entire amendment?
I understood that the intent of the Vice Mayor's motion is to strike the remainder of the resolution, except for lines 1 through 39 of page 3, and adding verbiage that the village manager is directed to add the overall fiscal year-to-date on the expenditures on a case-by-case basis.
And the overall litigation cost for the case. Yes.
Thank you.
Point of order.
Yes.
Isn't what the vice mayor is suggesting is actually a motion to amend the motion? And wouldn't that require a separate, once Marcia's motion was made, would require a motion to amend the motion?
So, Councilwoman Mattson and Vice Mayor Merwitzer were the first and the second, correct, on this motion? What I understand it to be is a request for her to modify it, and that he would maintain his second. I'm okay with that, doing it this way.
Thank you.
All right, so we're back on the motion as it has been amended. Anything else? Are there questions? Okay, this is a resolution. All those in favor, this is just the motion, but all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Aye. Okay, so now the item is amended. Now we're back on the item as it has been amended. Okay,
For
is there
discussion.
anything else? No? Anything else?
I think that this is getting now to, with the amendment, it's getting, I think, to a resolution that I hope satisfies the attorney and also gets to the gist of what I'm looking for, which is transparency for the public, so that they don't have to spend hours and hours trying to figure out what the litigation costs are and legal costs are. So I hope you'll support it, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else? All right, Madam Clerk, why don't you call the roll on it?
Councilmember Marcia Mattson?
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Cody?
No.
Mayor Karen Cunningham?
No.
Vice Mayor Mark Meriter?
Yes.
Councilmember Patrick Fiore?
No.
Okay, the item fails 3-2. Seeing. Okay, there's a motion to
Second.
adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We need 5 minutes to queue up. Is that right? Yep, okay, 5 minutes. So take a break. All right, good evening again. Today is Monday, July 20th, 2026. We're starting a little bit late, 7:14 PM. This is our budget workshop. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Mayor Karen Cunningham,
Present.
Vice Mayor Mark Meritzer,
Present.
Councilmember Patrick Fiore.
Present.
Councilmember Steve Cody.
Here.
Councilmember Marsha Matson.
Here.
Quorum is met.
Thank you. And we had invocation just a short time ago, so we'll let that roll over into our budget workshop. If everybody could please stand, and Director Carmona, can you lead us in the pledge? To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wonderful. At this time, we'll take requests, petitions, and public comments. And this will be the only time for requests, petitions, and public comments, so if you're going to speak, that would be awesome to do it now.
Eric Tolberg, 7884 Southwest 179 Terrace. The Southwest 87th Avenue Bridge is open. The project was done despite the objections of many in Palmetto Bay. There are sidewalks on both sides of Southwest 87th Avenue through Palmetto Bay from Southwest 184th Street to Southwest 141st Street, where it enters US 1. Except on the west side of Southwest 141st Street to Southwest 144th Street. Increased traffic due to Bridge A opening will make those 3 blocks very dangerous for pedestrians. We need to construct 970 foot of sidewalk in that section and over 3 blocks. The total cost will be about $35,000. Since the bridge was put in by Miami-Dade County and it is their road, they should pay for it. So I think we need to put it in our budget, but let's see if we can get the money from Miami-Dade County. Also, the Woods Park is 8.7 acres we got from Miami-Dade County, south of 168th Street from Southwest 88th Avenue to Southwest 88th Court. One of the requirements is for us to build a path across the park. This can be accomplished by building a 6 foot wide, 325 foot long sidewalk across the south side of the woods. Cost would be about $15,000. Portions of the north and southeast side of the woods have been cleared of exotic vegetation and planted as pine rockland. The sidewalk can be joined in the future with sidewalks along Southwest 8th Avenue and 88th Court, making a loop that will ease travel around the park and open it to Perrine Elementary. And we also need to have about $30,000 to $50,000 in the budget for sidewalk repair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Dalu Falkovich, 9280 Southwest 167 Terrace, Palmetto Bay. One of the things is that as I came in, I guess I missed some of it, special council meeting. You guys were talking about having a checkbook through our manager. I think our manager is one of the honest managers I've seen. I think one of the greatest managers, not only being honest, doing an amazing job in our village. And I trust, being a resident of Palmetto Bay, I trust our village manager for many reasons. Another thing is, one of the items that I'd like to see for the budget is having a safety board and make sure that our sheriff's office, the one that patrols the Palmetto Bay, be covered. And I think that should take, I know a lot of people like parks, and I like parks too, but if I go to a park, I don't want to get robbed. And my thing is, I think that better way, more money should be spent on our sheriff's office, make sure that our village is one of the safest. You know, I feel safe. I would honestly go at 2 o'clock in the morning, walk to the bank with no problem. That's how safe I feel. If I need to take cash out, I won't drive. I would actually walk to the bank because I feel safe, because I know that sheriff's department, as a resident, have my back. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
7740, oh, sorry, that's not my name, LaSalle Chinkachik. I live at 7740 Southwest 177th Street. I'm here to speak in regards to the millage rate and hope that in the budget consideration that you all vote unanimously for increasing, because we need the services that the village will be, providing, and all of the things that our directors are going to be talking about definitely needs to be paid for. So that's primarily what I would like for the council to consider.
Thank you so much. With that, do we have any comments by form? Okay. With that, I'll go ahead and close the budget. I'm so sorry, but public comments, and I'll turn it over to the village manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of the council, and for the community of Palmetto Bay, I've actually got 3 different presentations that we're going to do here this evening. You've already got my main presentation that was published with the agenda. I'm also going to go over the results of the survey that we did. We closed it just a couple hours ago. I tallied up all the numbers, and I've got hard copies that Carla is going to distribute here to the council. So I'll very briefly go over the survey and just broadly view the survey as you would public comment. I'm not making any claim that it is a scientific survey, but I think when you see the demographics of who answered it, I think you'll be able to put in perspective the results of the particular survey. And then finally, we're going to have our stormwater rate study presentation that will follow my main presentation, and that'll go over the results of the rate study that Ref Telos did, and they briefed a little bit about it a week ago at the Cal. So Olga, if you could please put my computer up here. For members of the Village Council, for the public, there's some copies up here available if you want to follow along on hard copy. So very briefly, we had a total of 167 folks who answered the survey, quite a bit less than we did last year. I think the timing of it was a little off this year. We did it in July. Tends to be a lot of people out of town, and many are just busy with summer activities. We'll try and regroup, do a different survey based on input that I get here from the council, and we'll do a different survey prior to the main budget hearing in September, when folks are back, kids are back at school, and so on. But just right up front, you see 98% of the people who answered the survey said they are property owners in the village. How long have you lived or worked in Palmetto Bay? By far, the largest number, almost 36%, have lived here 31 or more years. The second largest cohort lived here 16 to 30 years. So together, those long-term residents represent about 60% of the respondents on this survey. Again, I think if you look at it, they tend to be our most engaged residents, both in community meetings, in public comment, in providing input. So I think this is actually a very relevant response that we're going to get here this evening. No surprise, looking at age group 65 and older represents 41.3%. 55 to 64 represents another 25.7%. So together, nearly 70% of the respondents are 55 and older. I hope to get, more of a middle-aged demographic the next time we go out, particularly families with school-aged children would be important to capture their answers to these type of very important questions. As we ask residents, how important are the following village services to you? The answers were police, protection, public safety, canal and waterways patrolling, traffic enforcement, park maintenance hours, neighborhood beautification, community events, stormwater drainage, tree canopy, urban forestry, and finally, capital improvements. Here are the answers. No surprise, public safety far and away came in number 1. Number 2, again, no surprise for all of us in the business here, stormwater and drainage improvements, a very strong number 2, followed by capital improvements, park maintenance, tree canopy, all come in pretty high, as does traffic enforcement. No surprises really on any of those. So when they're asked to rank the most important budget priorities from 1 through 4, number 1, police, number 2, park, number 3, neighborhood beautification, and number 4, special events and community programming. Here's kind of the most important question of the entire survey. The village's current tax rate, 2.3018 mils, does not fully cover the cost of current services, primarily due to rising public safety costs. A rate of 2.69 mils would fully fund operations for a home with a median taxable value of $394,000. The difference is approximately $152 per year, or $12.67 per month. What statement best reflects your view? 34% say I support raising to 2.69. 34.7, that is one resident more, would prefer keeping the rate at or near 2.3018. 21.5% say I would support a modest increase, but not 2.69. And finally, I'm unsure comes in number 4th at just under 10%. Here are the raw numbers to those answers that I just said. But again, if you look at the demographic of who answered it, I think this puts in perspective, and I think the village council kind of gets, again, if you view this as public comment, I think you get a pretty good data point from this particular survey. Question 9, we educate the community that we did need to modestly draw on our reserve this current budget year, and what I'm going to propose for budget year 27, we will continue to draw on our reserves to fund the full cost of services. So we ask people what they think of that. Here are the answers in numbers. By far, well, not by far, but by 3 points, the village should prioritize restoring reserves, even if it requires a rate increase. Just under that at 28%, the reserve reduction is acceptable in the short term, and those residents who chose that do not think services should be cut or rates increased. And then finally, at just under 30%, the residents who selected that would prefer service reductions over millage rate increases. We talk a lot about, in our budget hearings and budget workshops, that only 13 cents of every dollar that a resident pays in property taxes actually goes to Palmetto Bay. The other 87% is paid to other agencies, mainly other Miami-Dade County agencies. And the question is, how much does that change what you feel about all of this? And the answer is not much. Moving on, when you consider the long-term value of your home, how important is it that the village continue to invest in public safety, infrastructure, high-quality community amenities such as parks? No surprise, almost 60% said extremely important. another nearly 25% said moderately important, slightly important, 13.17%, and 5 residents actually said not important. Question number 12, we tee up the November ballot measure that would increase the homestead exemption, and we asked residents to select what approach they would support. 43.7 said they would increase the millage rate. They would support increasing the millage rate to offset the loss. 30.5% said they would support reducing village services. 35.9 said they would support drawing down the reserve fund. Only 18.5% would support zoning changes that would increase density. And then finally, 40.7%, much larger number than I expected, would support new user fees for specific programs. And again, when you look at the demographic that answered this survey, I think it puts a lot of these responses in context. I did tee up, and I have proposed it just conceptually, that one response to an increase in homestead exemption would be to increase the amount of commercial properties in the village that are not subject to the increase in homestead exemption. And in this particular question, we asked if people would support increasing density in the island district of the downtown, which is that area that lies between the northbound and the southbound lanes of US 1 within the downtown zoning district of Palmetto Bay. Didn't get a lot of support. In fact, the largest response, 38.32, is strongly opposed. Another 10.18 is somewhat opposed. 26.9 somewhat support, and 12.57 strongly support. I'm not going to go into, if you did select somewhat support with conditions, what would you like to see in terms of restrictions? Because I think that answer itself kindly or largely settled that question. So getting back to responses to the increase in homestead exemption, what combination of approaches would you most support to maintain services while managing fiscal pressure? And we asked them to rank from 1 through 4, 1 being the most preferred, 4 being the least preferred. Number 1 was raise the millage rate to fully cover expenses. 2 was allow higher density development. The number 1 answer was reduce expenses by reducing services, followed by raise the millage rate, then draw from reserves, and then finally allow higher density development. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions or entertain comments and recommendations from the Village Council before I tee up my main brief.
Okay, any comments on the survey itself? My only comment would be if you could, thank you for the information, and you'll be reopening the survey. I did a quick video today inviting people to take the survey. Several people reached out and said, well,
Yes, ma'am. We will reopen we are reopening the survey.
Okay, it will be reopened tomorrow. How's that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We will have it reopened.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Are we ready for, all right. I think we're ready for your presentation.
Okay, if you could, there you go. So let me start off with, based on the discussion and the vote for the maximum millage rate, the finance director and I got together and we looked at what we thought would be possible and what we could achieve in terms of what support for what millage we'd be able to get from the village council. So we have built a draft fiscal year 27 budget around a 2.35 millage rate. So what that does is it requires a 4/5 majority vote. With the changes in the trim legislation from the most recent session of the legislature, a simple majority of the village council can only approve the rollback rate, which this coming budget year is 2.1802. So anything above that requires a 4/5 majority. To get anything above a 2.3982 to be specific, would require a unanimous vote. So again, if you look at where we are here in fiscal 27 and where Director Chin and I and the other department directors are building the budget is right here at 2.35. That represents, you can see how much of an increase that is over the rollback rate of 2.18. It's important to point out that 2.35 is still considerably lower than the structural target rate of 2.69, which we did pass as our maximum rate for the years. So what does 2.35 mean for the median taxable homeowner at $394,000? Well, this current year, 2.3018 mils, that would translate to an annual tax bill to the Village of Palmetto Bay of $907.56. With a proposed 2.35 millage, that would be roughly a $19 increase at $926 per year. If you look at the structural target at 2.69 mils, that would represent an annual tax payment to the Village of Palmetto Bay for the median priced home of just over $1,000, $1,060. So again, 2.35 compared to our current millage of 2.30 represents about $19 additional per year. How do we fit in at 2.35? Here's Village Palmetto Bay at 2.35. The Village of Pinecrest is at 2.50. The town of Cutler Bay is at 2.84. So at 2.35, the Village of Palmetto Bay maintains the same position that we have been in largely for the past 5 years. There are a number of cities and towns who are lower than Palmetto Bay. Most of those cities and towns, like Aventura, Sunny Isles, they're very unique communities within Miami-Dade County that have a very high percentage, of commercial properties. How do we balance the budget if we actually go with a 2.35 millage when I briefed earlier that the actual structural rate is 2.69? Well, to start with, our fiscal year 25 ending balance was $14.72 million. We budgeted and we assumed it would be $14.35. So we came in nearly $400,000 higher in our ending budget balance for fiscal year 25. So we started fiscal 26 with a much higher fund balance than we expected. Now let's look at my middle box here. Throughout 3 quarters of fiscal 26, we are currently running a $1.1 million surplus over the budgeted amount. And that includes all the expenses. That includes all of those litigation expenses that were unbudgeted. So if the fiscal year ended today, the village would be in a surplus of $1.1 million. You add those together, and we project that we will end our current fiscal year with about a 12.27 million fund balance. Very healthy. The Government Finance Officer Association recommends a 90-day fund balance. This puts us above a 6-month fund balance, so well over twice the recommended fund balance from the GFOA. This is one of the reasons why the village has maintained a AAA bond credit rating from Standard & Poor, is a high fund balance. So what I'm proposing here with a 2.35 millage is to use some of the surplus that we're generating this year to next year, and we will still end fiscal 27. This is the budget year that we're talking about, fiscal 27. We will still end with an $11.2 million fund balance. So again, if you look at what we're proposing here and what we're building our budget around, and I'm interested in hearing your comments and questions from the Village Council, we're looking at total budgeted revenues for fiscal 27 at $23.7 million. That represents about a 4.6% increase over our fiscal 26 budget. We're looking at total expenditures of $24.52 million, and that represents about an 8.1% increase over our fiscal 26 budget. How do we close that gap? Well, we close it with about $805,000 from the surplus that we're creating this year. That gap, plus about $250,000 in Coral Reef Park capital projects, which, by the way, that'll be the only capital project that I'm going to propose for fiscal 27, and that will be to replace the wood fencing around Coral Reef Park, which is in a constant state of deterioration. We're going to replace all of it with the new composite fencing that you can see on the northern border of the park. So what's the risk here? Well, you're using fund balance to pay for recurring costs. That's always a risky position to be in, but in the case of budget year 27, we had a couple of very favorable occurrences: a higher ending fund balance for fiscal 25, as well as very large $1.1 million fiscal 26 surplus. I'd also like to point out that our litigation reserve in our fiscal 27 budget is similarly reduced to zero as it has been for this budget year. So again, by transferring the $805,000 from fund balance, from our surplus that we are generating this year, we can cover all the expenses that we need to cover for fiscal 27. The big risk is going to come from the ballot measure that could expand the homestead exemption. And let's talk a little bit more about that, because just the general risk of using your fund balance to pay for recurring costs is there any year. But this particular year, we're also looking at the voters getting a say on whether or not they want to increase the homestead exemption. I've seen 2 polls lately, and in both of those polls, over a 60% majority of likely voters expressed a desire to pass that ballot amendment. So if that polling holds up, we very likely could be looking at a passage of the amendment that would affect not fiscal year 27, but fiscal year 28. And in fiscal year 28, that would represent, by our calculation, about $2.5 million in general fund loss in year 1. In year 2, the homestead exemption would increase to $250,000, and this number would be $4 million in year two. So fiscal '28, the hit to the general fund would be 2.5 million. In fiscal '29, the hit to the general fund would be 4 million. So you can see the increase, and that really does kind of frame the risk of using fund balance to pay for recurring costs. We can do it. Again, if HJR 1F passes, then we really need to reevaluate where the village needs to go in terms of reducing service levels, expanding user fees, raising millages. There's a whole host of potential actions that the village can take, and I think just that one data point from the survey gave you what one group of people thought, and there will certainly be many others between now and the time that the village has to take action. There's been a lot of talk about what has actually, or what causes kind of the structural imbalance we're in. We're very simply, our public safety budget is increasing generally on an annual basis, much larger than the revenue sources do. And I want to be very clear, and I know I've said it before, but the budget numbers we get from the sheriff's office, both the major and I get it from their finance department. The major and Major Guerra before Major Rodriguez have been exceptionally conservative in how they actually execute the budget. And we would not be in the position we are in now with the surplus that we have without the budget execution of Major Rodriguez and his team. But the budget numbers are given to us, and as we plan our budget for the year, we have to use those numbers. So you can see year on year, we're looking at about a 7.3% increase in the police budget. General government, as the village council knows, these are generally all the contracts and expenses that support two or more departments. These are things like utility costs, fuel costs, copier contracts, all of those type of expenses that support the inner workings of government. Planning and zoning, we had a much lower budgeted amount a year ago for planning and zoning, as we had outsourced much of the planning and zoning department. We have since brought that all in-house. So this number looks much bigger than it actually is. This reflects the total amount of planning and zoning that last year was divvied up among general government as well as planning and zoning. Facilities maintenance, we've increased the amount of money we're spending on facility maintenance just based on having additional buildings or additional responsibilities, such as the building at Coral Reef Park. Village attorney, there's been quite a bit of discussion already this evening about the village attorney. That percentage looks very large, but the actual rate in fiscal '26 is actually about 1.1 million when you include all of the costs together in the village attorney's line number. So $126,000 within context is actually not that much of an increase in the village attorney budget. There's been a lot of discussion about police, and I know a lot of residents feel that maybe if we had our own police department, that these numbers, we would have greater control. In fact, I think I even heard that this evening, that we should have our own police department. We'd have greater control over the costs. In years past, I did a deep dive on our police budget. If you could put my computer back up, please. I ended that. I'm going to go back to my presentation. I just want to very briefly talk about the Palmetto Bay Municipal District compared to the Pinecrest Police Department. And I'm not making any statement as to which one is better, as to what city has the better approach. I'm not making a value judgment here. I'm just talking about numbers and the people who think, and for good reason, they think that if we had our own police department, we would have greater control and we'd be able to do it for much less than we currently are. And I'm here to tell you that is just not the case. And I'm going to use Pinecrest as a good example here. And again, not to throw shade on Pinecrest, but just to show that the deal that we have with a Miami-Dade County sheriff is a good deal for the taxpayers. And that's not even getting into the competency of these two departments, which I will leave that discussion for another date. Here's our projected bottom line budget, if you look at my rightmost column, for the Palmetto Bay Municipal District, $12,773,000. Where does the village of Palmetto or of Pinecrest fall out? Their fiscal year 27 police budget is $16.385 million, with an additional cost of many of their vehicles that are not contained in this budget. So what does that additional, $3.6 million, nearly $4 million, what does that buy the village of Pinecrest? Here are the authorized positions, rightmost column. This is their current budget year, and it hasn't changed in fiscal year 27. They have a total of 34, in my bottom row here, they have 34 sworn police officers, another 3 detectives, for a total of 37 sworn police officers. What does the village of Palmetto Bay have? 37 sworn police officers. Going back to Pinecrest, where do we differ? Well, we differ in overhead, specifically chief of police, deputy chief, 3 captains. The village of Palmetto Bay has 1 major, 1 lieutenant. Village of Pinecrest has 9 sergeants, 3 of whom are involved in training and administration. The village of Palmetto Bay has 6 sergeants, 1 of whom is involved in training and administration. Here's where a lot of the overhead is. All the civilian personnel that support dispatch, that support record keeping. You've got administrative aides. You've got a victim service coordinator. You have HR. 3 traffic enforcement officers, part-time, and 4 crossing guards. Well, we have the crossing guards as well. There are a total of 79 employees in the village of Pinecrest, and they have the same exact number of police officers on the street that we have. In the military, we call this a tooth-to-tail ratio, and the village of Palmetto Bay has a far leaner tooth-to-tail ratio than Pinecrest. Again, not to throw shade on them, we are able to leverage, if you look at all these civilians, we are able to leverage the Miami-Dade County Sheriff's Office that provide dispatch and all of these other important functions that the village of Pinecrest has to have full-time employees do. We have a total of 4 civilians, and they have far more. And that's what the difference is. It's not in, again, if you look at what we used to call in the Marine Corps the trigger pullers, you've got 37 there, and we've got 37 here. So I just want to put that number in perspective for people who think that we would have greater control and we would be able to do it cheaper. And I would respectfully submit that we have not only an excellent deal, but we have by far a much more capable police department or sheriff's municipal district here. Okay, so to summarize, for fiscal year '27, what we are looking at in total budgeted revenue is about $23.7 million. The largest source, ad valorem taxes at $11.6 million, followed by utility service taxes, intergovernmental revenue, that's mainly the sales tax, our franchise fees, charges for services, the communications tax, and then much smaller revenue sources. I know fines, when we were talking about traffic and e-bike fines came up, our total budgeted number for fines is $172,000 for the year. So again, if you look at what really matters in the Village of Palmetto Bay, you've got your largest revenue sources: property taxes, utility taxes, sales taxes, franchise fees, and charges for services. Where does the money go? By far, police department or the sheriff's municipal district. Parks and Recreation comes in next. General government, again, they are all those type of contracts and requirements that support 2 or more departments in the village. And here you can see the remaining village departments: planning and zoning, HR, facilities, maintenance, finance, the manager, the clerk, the attorney, IT, and then finally the village council. Here's some very useful metrics. This is a change from the slide that is in the published brief. I updated these numbers with fiscal '27 numbers. I had mistakenly kept fiscal '26 numbers in the presentation that is in your agenda package. So if you look at police services, the Village of Palmetto Bay spends just over $507 per resident on police. National average is $100 less per person, $407. Parks and Rec, Village spends nearly $155 per resident on Parks and Rec. The national average is $93. So if you look at the village council, the village clerk, the village manager, finance, HR, communications, information technology, if you add up all of those departments, kind of the administrative overhead of running the village, that totals about 12.7% of the general fund budget, or about $125 per resident. So if you look at standards of in terms of how lean as an organization, the Village of Palmetto Bay runs a very lean governmental organization. If you look back over the years, the village has had an enormous 5-year run on capital, about $32 million total from fiscal year '22 through fiscal year '26. With the level, with the millage rate that we're looking at potentially for fiscal '27, I've already spoken about, we're only going to bring forward one project, $250,000 for that composite fence railing around Coral Reef Park. Again, that perimeter fencing. If you look back, here's some more details on our 5-year capital spending plan. Again, about $32 million total. Single largest category was Parks and Rec, nearly $16 million. Second largest, stormwater, clocking in at just over $9 million. You can see the details here. Transportation at $2.7 million. Facilities and infrastructure at $1.7. We had quite a few water projects at $1.1 million, and then you can see the remainders. How was it funded? We did leverage most of our $12 million in ARPA funding Most of that 12 million was leveraged on those capital investments. We did benefit from both federal, state, and local grants and fees, and then our general fund surpluses, and that's why it's important to generate a surplus every year. Our general fund surpluses filled in the balance, and we were able to really fund a remarkable 5-year spending plan. And with that, Madam Mayor, I'm happy with my department directors here and the Sheriff's Major to answer any questions you may have.
Wonderful. Let's start questions. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I saw that our only capital project for the following fiscal year is going to be the replacement fence at Coral Reef Park. My understanding is that we have over $600,000 in park impact fees available. Is that correct?
It's probably going to end up being quite a bit less. I think we'll probably end up at about 250,000 in our fund balance. Director Chin, park impact fee. You have the current balance, and we know we have some expenditures coming out of there.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Yes, Manager. Roughly about 200,000 to 300,000 from where we're at.
So probably around 250 or so, you think?
Yes, combined.
Okay,
They're
combined.
of the two impacts. Yeah.
Okay.
And is that park fence project being funded by our fund balance or the park impact fees?
By the fund balance.
Got it. I guess one of the questions I'd pose to council is, given that we have about $250,000 worth of park impact fees available, I personally walk through Coral Reef Park quite a bit. Maybe one of the projects that we consider as a capital project from that park impact fee to get an estimate on would be to redo some of the bathrooms that we have, especially over by the baseball field. Those are quite old, and I think could use some updating. And then also some of the other areas as well. I believe we have 2 bathrooms that are along the paths, and then we have the one at the cafe, and then we have one at the rec center. So I'd love to have a conversation to see if we can potentially use some of that park impact fee balance to redo some of those bathrooms, because, again, they're kind of old.
Good afternoon, if I may, Manager. Impact fees can only use to add to your existing facilities. You can't repair or replace.
Got it. What about being able to use it for, I guess the other thing I would use it for then is the woods. Are we able to use the park impact fees for woods improvements then?
It's new, if anything that's new.
I mean, by definition, I feel like it would probably be a new improvement if we're working on the woods. So I'm wondering then, I'd pose this to the council, then perhaps allocating some of that money. I know some residents want to go a little bit slower with the woods. Perhaps we can allocate a portion of that for some additional work this coming year into the woods. From that park impact fee balance. So I'll pose that to the council. Thank you.
My only question, what is the budget for the woods this year? Because I thought we were going to take like I don't want to call it a cooling off period, but a growing period, because we
Right.
just did a lot of planting. So then what's next?
No, that's actually, well, not a cooling off, but yes, we're going to take a year to maintain the existing plantings that they've done, let them grow in and mature a little bit for a year. I think we have 40,000. What did we? I think we put 40,000 against it. And the Parks Director and the Finance Director are agreeing with that number. I'm pretty sure it was 40 that we put against it.
I was just wondering, because it doesn't sound like there's going to be, I mean, maybe a year from now, I'm not debunking your wanting to add additional funds to it, but it sounds like that would be for maybe the year after.
Yes, ma'am. And actually, our contractor, IRC, recommended we give everything a year, let it grow in, establish itself. They have provided us a scope for phase 2, And our intention also over this next year is to seek grant funding opportunities so that we be able to offset some of that cost for phase two.
Thank you. I see a lot of notes over here. Do you have a lot of questions, or you have some questions? Okay, comments, all right. Anyone else with questions?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. In addition to the woods, Mr. Manager, so the path, is that for next year, or is that for this year?
No, that'll be this year.
The path is still for this year?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Quick question. One of the things I learned a long time ago in this capacity was if I didn't make sure it was in the budget, it may not be in the budget. Just a couple of thoughts here, and I don't know where my colleagues are, but first, a quick question. Our AAA bond rating, there's 411 cities in the state of Florida, and I think, is it 12 or 15 of them? 12. And proudly, we are one of those cities that holds a AAA bond rating, which I don't think we talk about that enough, because that really speaks to fiscal responsibility. How is that AAA bond rating, if at all, going to be affected by this particular budget or things that may be occurring like homestead exemption reform?
Well, I think we're going to end up, regardless of what the village council wants to do in terms of millage, we're going to end up better than we forecast. And some of the criteria that go into that rating are things like your overall debt level, which has been steadily decreasing every year. Your fund balance, which is actually going to end up better than we forecast. So, I mean, I can't predict what the rating agency is going to do, but I do believe that, if anything, regardless of challenges we have to make the numbers all work, we're still going to end up in a better position than we had forecast, both in terms of debt level, fund balance, and the things that really matter to the rating agency.
That's good news, and I don't believe that you can't predict, because you have predicted for the last 5 years. Every time we've done a budget, you actually have predicted in some ways what the future holds. So I don't know if you've got some kind of crystal ball going on, but appreciate that. So just a couple of things, and this is really just seeing if my colleagues are interested in making sure what direction we want to take. The first was in speaking with the PTA presidents from all 5 of our schools that are associated with our compact, and then also speaking with our education advisory board members separately, because they weren't able to meet at some point, so I couldn't get an official opinion from them. I wondered if there was the possibility, and I don't really want to micromanage this, but that we set aside something like $12,500 from this coming budget, and then figure out, let the Education Advisory Board or work with the manager or their liaison to come back with a way of fund distribution for those schools. Maybe it's for a project, and the example I would use would be, we had a school come before us, the Southwood Middle School, come before us for their robotics. I know Vice Mayor and I had dialogue with several of the parents, and unfortunately I wasn't able to make that particular meeting, but gratefully the council passed for that, some dollars to go towards a sponsorship. This would be essentially $2,500 if it gets broken down that way, $2,500 per school that are a part of our compact. So that includes Palmetto Senior High, and you all could come up. You all being we all, or the next council y'all, or the Education Advisory Board, come up with some way of figuring out how we could disperse those dedicated funds to good projects going on in the schools. That's one thought. And then the other thing that we talked about at the first budget workshop, and again, I don't know, and Vice Mayor, you might have some ideas on this, how we want to approach this, but we talked a little bit about the iBus and the freebie. Obviously, to the general public, those are services that we provide out of our CITT funds. So we did make a commitment to the parents that had come out several months back, that as we start going through this budget cycle, we'd have some conversation with them. I really haven't been able to tell them anything because I don't know what direction the council wants to take. So do we want to host a small meeting for them to discuss? Do we, what our, oh, my goodness, I'm so sorry. It's not the hour, it's only 5 minutes after 8. What are our intentions as it relates to the iBus and, I know we have the 4 freebies, so things to think about. But as it relates to the 12,500, I wondered if there was some temperature to go ahead and at least put it in the budget. We don't have to make a decision on the what and the mechanics of it all, but just that money would be set aside for that. And if I could make a motion, I would, but
What would the motion be?
to set aside in the budget $12,500 for the public schools that are a part of our Education Advisory Board compact, and allow the Education Advisory Board to come up with a process for dispensing the funds.
Wait, just a reminder, this is a workshop, so we can't make any motions or take any
Oh,
actions.
okay, all
You
right.
can discuss it, you can
Okay.
get a consensus that you
Okay,
all might
thank you.
support or
Thanks for
not,
that.
but yes.
All right, yeah, sorry, yeah. Well, I would like to do that. Okay. I got 2 others, I think. I don't think Councilwoman Matson was no, and Councilmember Fort. So, thank you. And then the iBus, I don't know how you want to approach that, Mr. Manager. I mean, at some point, we have to have discussion.
Well,
about
we're going to do a presentation. We had hoped to have it tonight, but unfortunately, Freebie had been working on some other items for us. But based on a recommendation from the Vice Mayor, we went back to Freebie, requested that they give us a proposal to run the iBus as it is. We're not going to make changes to it, but run the iBus as is. And that would get us around having to do the capital expenditure for 2 new iBuses, which is really what the kind of the long pole in the tent, so to speak, is. Both of those iBuses are aging out and need to be replaced either this year, and if you remember, we've had a number of times where one or more has been out of commission due to maintenance problems. So contracting with Freebie to run the current iBus route. Interesting, I don't want to scare anyone, but we'll throw it out there. They're also going to give us a proposal to do it without a driver. So we may not be ready for it. Culturally, we may not be ready for it the year 2026, but it's coming. So we should have both of those quotes for you, Vice Mayor.
So is there a presentation that's going to, I know it's not happening tonight, but are we doing a separate presentation coming up?
It'll
or-
be up, as soon as I get it from Freebie, I'm going to forward it to the Village Council, so you have it. But the next opportunity would be the September budget hearing. But I'll send it to you as soon as I get it, and that way you already know what you want to do. And as long as you don't cross-communicate, just tell me what you think. And that may be our option, to be very honest.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'll just say, I haven't seen the freebie offer, but my preference would be that if we were to contract out that service, given the budget situation that we're in, I'd like to potentially see us do a full-on open RFP to see if anyone would come back, and essentially we just compare what the proposals that we get are. My understanding is that Freebie is more specialized with point-to-point service. I do know that they have operated in the past the fixed route, but I know that there's a lot of other companies out there that can do fixed route. I know there's, especially in Miami-Dade County, there's at least like 3 that I know can do this. So in my opinion, whatever presents us the best proposal should win here. I'm not married to any single one of them, so I'll just float that idea to the council if there's consensus for that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting concept. But is that a like or
More along the lines of a, aha.
Well, it's really just that we can't, since we can't do motions, the manager's just looking for some direction. So I hear you saying yes, okay, and you're saying
Yes.
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 New council.
Well, unfortunately, we'll be gone, but we got to make a decision on whether the trains are going to run on time or not.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. And then last, if I could, so I did have the opportunity to meet with each one of the directors, and thank you all. It was my last time in this capacity, meeting with you all to discuss budget, and I hope you heard my heartfelt message, which was thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you do for the village. What always is apparent to me is how much each one of you actually loves, even if you don't live here, loves the village of Palmetto Bay and really wants to do right by the residents here. And each one of you would be very happy, each one of them did not ask for anything. They explained to me projects, because my question was, is there any project that you're concerned with that won't be funded? I did not hear. I think they've expressed to you the projects that are most important. The only thing, and this was not an ask, this was really a thought of mine after meeting with Director Carmona, that we perhaps keep, I know your proposal is to remove some full-time folks, creating part-time positions, but my preference, even if it's not filled immediately, would be to keep a full-time park supervisor position, if I'm getting that correct from our dialogue earlier today, and perhaps one PSA position. Again, I know it looks a little messier when you've got those positions there and they're not filled, and you've done the right thing trying to clean up each one of the positions that we haven't filled for whatever the reason. But as I start looking, and the Vice Mayor actually brought this up, which was part of my thinking process, was as it relates to our beautiful rec center over at Coral Reef, and just wanting to make sure that we've got, when the time is right, to that spot available. It's much harder to put in a spot after you've made decisions. I'm sorry, I won't look at you, Fanny. I'm not going to look. It's much harder to put in positions after we've made a decision, rather than making a decision to leave those positions, and then at mid-year review, which there'll be other individuals here to help in that capacity, maybe at that point you decide to fill it, or maybe beforehand things are going well and you say, hey, let's start plugging this position in. So I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are, but we are the Village of Parks, and we've got a lot of beautiful parks. We've got another one onboarding at some point, and I'm sorry for the rest that I'm not recommending more people. I think everybody needs more people, but I also think the parks is a pretty big component, second biggest chunk of our pie. So that would be, I don't know how everyone else feels about it.
Well, I'd point out also, Mayor, we've got Veterans Park that, 18 months from now, we'll have our initial capability and it'll be open. So I have no issue. We'll keep the positions. I think we have at least one full-time supervisor. I think we have one or more PSAs. I forget. I'll get with Director Carmona and Director Cadaval, and we'll figure it out. But we can keep those positions. At some point, we are going to need to fill them. So it probably is a better idea just to keep the position on the book, and that way we just need to fund it. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to do that. Thank you. All right, I know you've got comments. Are there other comments? All right, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. All right, I feel like I'm in an alternative reality here in terms of what's coming down the pike with this reduction, property tax reduction. But before I get into that, let me just say that on a really, really common sense level, like a family, the family's had a pretty good run. It's spent pretty much what it's wanted to. We had a tremendous gift, what I call almost like if we were a family, it would be like an inheritance or winning the lottery. We got $12.4 million from the federal government. And that bought a lot of stuff, paid for a lot of stuff, including hiring staff and giving staff increases, putting money into the pickleball center, a lot of stuff. Stormwater. I was making a list today. There are so many things that we spent or bought from that. However, it's gone. We spent it. And now we're coming up against a situation where we don't have enough money. And I appreciate the manager. He's trying to keep the family afloat here with what they want, and I appreciate it. However, we are now, realistically, we are taking our savings, which is in budget speak called reserves. We're taking our savings to pay for our recurring expenses. And that's bad. That's really bad news. That is, what I'm saying is, how much money we spend, we're now having to draw on savings to pay for it. And that's heading down a really bad path. I know in my family and when I was growing up, we didn't do that. We cut back expenses. We cut back what we were spending. And considering property tax reduction is probably coming down the pike, we should really plan on what we're going to be cutting because things are going to be seriously in trouble. But just for this year, we don't know what's going to happen in November, so just for this budget year, we need to start reducing our spending just for this year so we don't tap into our savings. Why not cut our spending? I haven't heard about that tonight. We're just talking about, well, keeping the spending going. Well, why not cut the spending? Because we don't want to dip into our savings. In my family, we wouldn't buy a car, or we wouldn't take a big trip, or we wouldn't eat out every week, or something like that. I mean, these are things that we have to be responsible about our money and not dip into savings, go into debt. So I have some suggestions about what can be done. I'm not going to make any suggestions about spending money because I think we should not be spending money. I think we should be cutting. So we definitely have to look at cutting these recurring expenses. And for that, I just recommend that have each department recommend a certain percentage cut that would make up for our deficit so we don't have to dip into spending, savings. So we can all work together to come up with cuts that then would balance our budget. We can ask Councilman Cody to pledge to stop filing lawsuits or to settle lawsuits.
Councilwoman?
We can settle the Luxcom lawsuit. That's taking up $500,000 a year.
Councilwoman, I don't think we should be discussing matters of litigation and settling.
We can negotiate the police contract. I mean, all right, again, on a really simple level, when I need work done and I go out for estimates, and if the contract is presented to me, well, I negotiate the contract. So why not negotiate it? I mean, it's like everything is fixed. That's what it reminds me of. It's like an alternative reality. Our spending is fixed, the police budget's fixed, parks fixed, so then we have to figure out how to pay for it. But I don't look at it like that. I mean, a budget can be negotiated. Can our user fees be adjusted? That would be some way. Well, can we stop, can we look at fee waivers? I mean, it's a small amount of money, but still, can we look at that? Everything counts. When a boat has a leak, or it has many leaks, you try to fix all of them. You know, a little leak can become a big leak. Spending on public relations and marketing. I mean, do we need to do that much that we're doing now? All right, so to me, the rational thing, the responsible thing is to start cutting and not keep spending. Now, for the last 4 years, I have voted against raising taxes by raising the millage, and I'm going to vote against it again this year because, to me, we are not being responsible stewards of the taxpayers' money. And I don't want our taxpayers, our property owners, to have to pay for continued spending in which we have to dip into our savings to pay for it. So, thank you.
Do you want to correct, I was going to correct some of the comments that were made,
Yeah.
but
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again, not to be argumentative, but what I've presented has zero for litigation reserve. So that would be the big item, respectfully, Dr. Mattson, that you proposed, and I've already zeroed that out. It frequently comes up on various Facebook posts about our communications and marketing, and respectfully, we don't spend that much. I have a full-time PIO, I have a part-time videographer, and a part-time social media specialist. That's it. You're not going to balance you can get rid of all of that, and you know, you're not going to do much. The other items, the fee waivers, if the village council wants to repeal the fee waiver ordinance, then I believe you should, if that's what you want to do. If not, the cost of that, I mean, respectfully, is trivial. The actual cost is trivial. So with that, thank you, Mayor.
Can I respond to that, please?
sure.
Okay. To zero out litigation is not realistic because we are increasing our litigation expenses every year. To zero them out in the budget, how can you do that? This is a huge expense, and it's zero in the budget. I looked at your chart. I thought, well, maybe you know something I don't know, like we're not going to have any more lawsuits or we're going to settle. But to zero out doesn't make any
No, ma'am.
sense.
I'm
It's
just,
one of our biggest expenses.
Yes, ma'am, and not to be argumentative, but I'm following the practice that this council adopted for this budget year, where you took the litigation reserve and therefore all litigation expenses out of the budget and made a decision that you would fund those out of fund balance, and if we needed to do a mid-year review and recapitalize our litigation reserve line item, we would do that. Thankfully, this year, we've under-executed the budget, and we entered the year with a higher fund balance than we forecast. So we have been able to not only pay all the litigation expenses, but all of what we expect that we haven't yet received for the remainder of the fiscal year, we should be able to cover all of those this year. So I've just continued that into the next budget year.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Actually, a question, and then followed by, I guess, some more comments. The question that I have is, I see that the, I guess, deficit or fund balance withdrawal was 800,000. This coming fiscal year, it seems like we're going to be ending up with a under execution of about $1 million-ish. I mean, I don't want to hold you to it, but it's like, that's the ballpark. In the event next year we under execute and we're at that same, I guess, area, would that essentially cover that $800,000 if we under execute?
Yes.
Okay, that's my only, that's one question. The other question I have is taking some inspiration from the county. They've done some not so smart things lately, but they've also done some pretty smart things. One of the smarter things that was done is that they actually hired a third-party consultant to come in, and what they did is instead of paying them outright a fee, they split some of the savings that they identified. So for example, the county hired in early 2025 when they were also staring at the edge of a fiscal cliff, and they're about to face a much worse one this coming year. But nonetheless, they reached out to McKinsey and split essentially whatever they would find, they would split with McKinsey. And they actually found over $160 million in savings with just the Jackson Health System alone. I don't know what that could look like here in Palmetto Bay if we can get a similar deal, but I think it would be worthwhile to explore maybe having a third-party consultant come in and advise us to see if there's ways we can identify efficiencies and also just have a more leaner, even more lean and more structurally balanced government long-term, and just see if we can identify those savings. So I wanted to put that out on the table, see if there's consensus from council on that, and perhaps even having, I know that on Thursday we have an executive session, perhaps if the manager's willing, put out an RFP, see what comes back, and even if it's not done for this budget cycle, perhaps next budget cycle, we can have that available and make some more informed decisions as a council.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Cody?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am surprised that I witnessed this evening from the councilwoman a road to Damascus moment from her. She tells us that, and my colleague knows what that means, that we need to cut back on spending money. Well, over the years that I've been on the council with you, Councilwoman, you have put forward a number of projects, not through the budget process, but just because you thought that they were a good thing to do. Like, we'll reimburse you for adopting a pet. We'll reimburse you for emergency pet expenses. Wasn't in the budget, but you thought it was a good idea. Things like, and believe me, somebody who uses a shower chair, I understand the importance of grab bars, but that wasn't in the budget as well. What I would like the manager to do is to give us a list of items, the million orchids that the councilwoman has put forward in the last budget, or post last budget, and let's make sure that we eliminate all of those programs. Because if you say we can't afford things, we can't afford what you have not put through the budget. So I'm glad to see that you're all for not spending money, but I will support you in withdrawing those. I do take umbrage at your comment about lawsuits. If you want me to promise not to file any lawsuits, I will ask you not to do something as foolish as trying to delegate out from the council to the Charter Revision Commission or other entities the legislative power that this body has. And the same for that is what the gentleman to my right did with regard to deciding that an exercise of free speech must be punished. So if the two of you would decide not to do that and make that promise, perhaps I'll come forward with a promise to you, Councilwoman, as well. But that's all I have. I frankly think that we should put the amount of money, a reserve for litigation in the budget, rather than just paying it on a catch-as-catch-can basis. So, thank you, Madam Mayor.
One moment, Vice Mayor. Mr. Durney?
Oh, yes, I just wanted, there was one thing that, Nick and I had talked about, and I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, because we talked about, cutting expenses. One of the things we talked about, at least in legal, is that there's a mechanism called cost recovery, where for certain development projects, right now, for whatever reason, the village has never utilized it, but it allows the village to shift the costs of certain development analysis and development-related legal review and other non-legal review to the developer. So we talked about also implementing that, and that would hopefully, would shift some of the expenses from the village to the developer. I know we do it in Cutler Bay, we do it in Pinecrest. It's been effective, and we don't usually do it at the same rate because obviously these are private clients, but they'd be private entities, not government entities. But I'm happy to do it at whatever rate we charge in Cutler Bay. Would be consistent with the two cities. So if that's something that the village is open to, I mean, those were some avenues that we've tried to see, because we see the issues here too. So we're trying to brainstorm, and I wish I could say this was creative, but it's in the code, so it's not all
Is that something you need policy for?
I would say if the consensus of, I'll look to see if we need a formal vote, which obviously wouldn't be able to take tonight, but if the consensus amongst the council is that you'd like for us to do something like that, we'll look and see if we need a formal vote of the council, but, and we could bring it back if we do. But if the majority of you are open to it, I think it's an effective way to shift some of the costs.
That's great. Is everyone open to that? I see a thumbs up, then yes, and okay, and yeah.
Could I respond to the Councilman
Sure.
Cody's comments?
Can I
Okay.
go ahead and
Please,
respond?
let me
and
just
then
do it
Vice
before I forget. Okay. So just in terms of what I propose, I'm very proud of it. They're such tiny amounts of money. It makes fee waivers look tiny, truly. So far, so far from what I can calculate that's been on the manager's checkbook, you've cost the village about $54,000 in your lawsuits or ethics complaint, the ethics complaint you filed against me. My programs are no more than $5,000 each, and they haven't even begun to be spent. I don't know, just a handful of people have adopted a pet. I mean, it's a pittance compared to what bill you're running up. Also, the other thing I'd like to say is that I accept, and all the other council members accept council decisions. But you file lawsuits when you disagree with a council
When you do
decision.
something stupid and illegal, yeah.
Point of order.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Just
And-
accept council decisions.
okay,
It's our
thank you.
legislative
We're-
process.
We're done with the back and forth. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I came prepared tonight with some ideas and suggestions, and I just shared some of them. But I would just say to the folks watching at home, I feel like this is part of the underlying challenge that we have with the Village of Palmetto Bay's council, which is that instead of having productive conversations, everything has to be personal, in your face, called stupid. And I just think that we're better than this. And I would just hope that as the night goes on, instead of just pointing fingers, look, and I agree, a lot of the decisions that we made, I disagree with. I mean, I can point to the $3 million pickleball, I can point to lobbyist contracts, I can point to all of that, but that's not the most productive way of handling tonight, because the way we need to handle this is an $800,000 fiscal crunch, and by the sounds of it, there's a couple of ways we can get out of it. But to me, it's just, I wish we could have more productive conversation instead of just this attitude of, in my view, nastiness. So I just want to put that on record, and that was just seen fully tonight, and I'm very disappointed. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's the way a couple people roll, so that's all we can do is, they have the right to speak. They do have the right to speak. Okay, Councilmember Fiore, you've been awful quiet.
Yeah, 100 days.
I want 100 ideas for every day.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I would say, I joke about that, but I really think it is incumbent upon this council. Basically, we have one job between now and November, and that's to keep the ship of state afloat as best we can in the best interests of the residents and turn it over to 3 new people. I listened to a lot of what was said. I could say this about the lawsuits. It would be if it's in the best interests of the village to settle these before we're done in November, depending on, what our legal advice is from all sides on everything. That's one big way of eliminating a lot of this deficit. But I really think what the manager did was very professional, and as far as it is to get us to November. Because after November, I leave Misters Cody and Merwitz are here to deal with issues of state going forward. So I really think that's our main issue. Our main job is to keep this ship of city rather than state, not just afloat, but to do the best we can to give the people the services they deserve at the minimal cost, knowing there's events beyond our control on Election Day. That's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there more? Yep.
I propose the consultant. I'm just wondering if there's appetite on council for that.
Not for me, no. Yep. Thank you for the recommendation. Okay, sir, we have another presentation, is that right? Yes. And you guys have sat there so patiently. Are you enjoying yourselves? I want you to be happy. Can they come up to present? Great.
Yes, ma'am, they can. And Director Torres, too, if you could come up, introduce the team here, and I have your presentation on my computer. Just tell me when to advance or go back, okay?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I'm proud today to have Raftelis here. They had presented, part of their team had presented some of the background of what we were reviewing, how we were coming up with our stormwater fee assessment. Tonight, we're going to talk specifically about the rates. I know everybody was concerned. Many of you had questions about what's the rate, what's the number. You wanted that information, so hopefully we plan on sharing that tonight and give you more detail. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our team of Raftelis.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dio. Good evening. I'm Joe Williams from Raftelis, Vice President, and with me I have Tristan Townsend, consultant, and I'm going to turn it over her in a minute to do most of the presentation. But just to highlight, this is our first engagement with the village, so we really appreciate you all working with us. We're working through Kimley Horn, who I know does a lot of work with you all. And really the highlight that I just want to bring to the table in the beginning is you haven't done rate adjustments for your Stormwater Enterprise Fund in several years. We'll talk about that. And recently, the expenditures of the department for keeping up with ongoing drainage needs and completing some of the master plan projects that were identified in the 2020 master plan, you've fallen behind on the revenues to keep up with operating the stormwater system. So we're here to present to you the options moving forward, kind of highlight the need. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Tristan. She'll walk you through it and show you some of the numbers, and then we're happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Thanks for your time. I'm going to walk you through the presentation, perfect. Next slide, please. So I'll just take you through the agenda, just laying out what we'll be talking through tonight. So we're going to first talk about the background and the study objectives. We'll talk about the revenue requirements, which are all the various costs that are needed to be recovered. We'll talk through the revenue sufficiency, which is how sufficient are your rates to recover those identified costs. Go through a quick summary of the findings, and then we'll have time for questions. Next slide, please. Next slide. So just want to talk about the background. So you all do own and operate your own stormwater system. You serve about 8,000 customers. You do have a stormwater rate in place right now. It's a monthly fee of $5 per equivalent residential unit, or ERU. That's about what the single-family residential customer is going to be paying every month. That rate has been in place since 2020, and prior to that, the rate was $4, and that was in place since 2006. So it's been pretty level for a good amount of time. You all are currently working with Kimley Horn on a stormwater master plan as well. Next slide, please. So just to walk you through the objectives for our rate study, we were tasked to do a 5-year revenue sufficiency analysis. So we start with the current fiscal year as our base or test year, and then we tack on the following 5 years. So the forecast period covers fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2031. We look at your operating expenses, your debt service, your capital improvement plan, and the funding strategy for those. We are going to be recommending some rate adjustments to help support those identified revenue requirements and your reserve needs, and then also presenting findings, and we'll have a summary report prepared as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. So going to start with our operating expenses and existing debt service. So we did rely on your existing fiscal year 2026 budget for our projection. We look at all of the different line items there, so your salaries, benefits, supplies, maintenance, things like that, and escalate those by various factors into the future to come up with our future year projections. We did look at your historical expenditures, compared those to your prior year budgets, and just looked at the execution rate on that. You guys do tend to spend less than what you budget, which is very typical, but we did just want to account for that, and so we did make a minor adjustment on the starting point for fiscal year 2026, so that does carry through into the future years. We did also assume in fiscal year 2031 a new vac truck and stormwater crew out there. That's going to help you be able to do a little bit more maintenance, clear the pipes a little bit more, and things like that. So just help improve your services. And so you can see on the right, the operating expenses, that's that dark blue kind of chunk of these bars, how that's increasing, and you can see that a little bit increased there in 2031 as well. You also do have existing debt service. You all pay a portion of the Miami-Dade County stormwater bonds to them. Those bonds help install drainage in the village. So it's about $108,000 annually that you all pay to them in principal and interest, and that is going to mature in 2029. So you can see on the chart here on the right, that kind of lighter blue teal color, that's your existing debt, and you can see that in the final 2 years of the forecast, it does go away then. So just on average, your operating maintenance expenses are increasing about 5.2% annually in this forecast. Next slide, please. So next piece is the capital improvement program. So you all, we do have about $6.9 million in capital projects assumed in our forecast period. That does include your localized drainage improvements that you all budget annually at about $300,000 per year. We do escalate that at about 3.5% going into the future, just to maintain, inflation and things like that. It also includes 2 other sub-basin drainage projects as well that were identified in the 2020 master plan. So that's what we have in this kind of 5 to 6 year window. We are assuming some funding from rate revenues or cash. That's for those local drainage improvements. And then we also are assuming some debt funding for those other 2 projects that I mentioned. There are going to be some additional capital expenses beyond the forecast period. Those are also projects that were in the prior master plan, but since you all are working on updating that with Kimley Horn, that capital plan is going to be refined, so you can kind of revisit that in the future as well. Next slide, please. This is just laying out the different projects that are included there. So 2 sub-basin drainage, sub-basin number 43 and number 11, and then those local drainage improvements. And those project costs there on the right are for the kind of forecast period that we're operating in the 2026 through 2031. We are assuming some SRF loan funding for those 2 drainage sub-basins. Those are state revolving fund loans. They're low interest loans that are offered through the state DEP. Next slide, please. We do want to share our assumptions regarding those loans with you all. So both of those projects are roughly $2.5 million for project funding. The term length would be 20 years. We're assuming a 2% interest rate, and that results in an annual debt service of about $150,000 per year. We think the debt service is going to help minimize your rate impact, to help smooth out the funding, and so we kind of feel that's appropriate as well, given these are going to be longer life assets as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so for our revenue sufficiency, we'll kind of just take a look right at the rates, and then I'll kind of tell you how we landed on those. So right now, your existing rate per ERU is $5. We're proposing that you increase the rate to $8.50 in this upcoming fiscal year, and then the years following that increase to 9, 10, 11, and 13 per ERU, and that's a per monthly rate. Next slide, please. So this kind of chart here helps lay out how we arrived on those adjustments. So each of the different kind of boxes that stack up represent the costs that we just walked through. So the operating expenses, the existing and proposed debt service, and the cash funded capital, or those local drainage improvements. So you can see how those stack up. There's a dark black-blue line kind of cutting through the operating expenses that you can see. It's pretty steady. Yep, right there. You can see that that does not cover your operating expenses. Those are your revenues at your existing rates right now. So we are operating at a deficiency. So that is something that we would suggest be corrected. The proposed rates that we just showed you are what the rates would look like at this kind of purple dash line. And so you can see those hug really tightly with those identified costs. We're not really generating much of a surplus at all. We're just, recovering those exact identified costs. So being really tight on that there. Next slide, please. So for our cash balances, so this chart here shows kind of what your ending cash balances would be at the end of each fiscal year. We are kind of aiming to be around $1 million each year, roughly, kind of on average here. You can see that on this kind of yellow-orange dashed line on the chart. The blue represents what your operating reserve balance would be in the stormwater fund. So the cash reserves remain in line above your target, which is good. The reserves are going to allow you to have flexibility in funding any unanticipated expenses that could come up, any emergencies if you guys experience a storm or something and you have repairs that need to come up. That's helpful for that, and also any additional capital projects that could be identified in the master plan or be outside of this forecast window. Next slide, please. So we did a local comparison with some peer communities as well. We want to see kind of where you land relative to them. So you can see you guys are at the $5 on that, yep, right there on the chart, kind of toward the lower end on rates. With the $8.50 rate adjustment for fiscal year 2027, you're right in the middle of the pack. You're not really out of line with what your peers are doing. And one important thing to note is that we're comparing with other communities at today's rates. So they also have funding needs. They also are likely going to have improvements, operating increases as well. Nobody's immune to inflation, so their rates are likely going to go up in the future as well. And so those rates could increase and you could be kind of lower in the future relative to them potentially. Next slide, please. So in summary, your existing revenues are not sufficient to recover the operating expenses and existing debt service right now. We would propose that you consider use of SRF funding for your capital projects to help minimize rate impacts and smooth out the funding for those capital projects. We did identify a rate plan. We would recommend adopting 2 years of adjustments to help address your operating deficiency. And as your stormwater master plan is underway and those capital projects get refined into the future, you could revisit the plan and see what's appropriate, what path you want to take after a couple of years. And with that, we can take any questions.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, then Councilmember Cody.
Thank you. So I remember at the Committee of the Whole presentation, there was also a urban forestry program that was also presented. I was wondering if you also have those rates available tonight.
Yes, we did look at those rates. I'll let Joe answer the question for you.
Thank you. So basically, for any of the rates that we showed on the going from $5 to $8.50 to $10, for the basic program that you all discussed last week, if you had about $1.50 starting in 2027 in each year throughout, that's our projection of covering the basic program. And if you add about $3 to $3.50 to each of those rates, for the advanced program would be where you end up. So in the last year for the advanced program, we showed $13. The advanced program would be about $16.50. The basic program would be about $14.50 at the end.
Makes sense. The next question I have is with the vac truck, why is it recommended to have the vac truck in fiscal year 31 instead of earlier in the process?
That was something that materialized during the discussion of, I believe, that urban forestry green infrastructure program, and the team working with staff had identified that as a later need as part of the program.
I mean, does the manager have anything to add regarding the vac truck and the needs on that, or?
Nothing really to add. We wanted it, basically that would be about 10 years since we bought the original truck, and that would get us closer to our goal about being able to do the entire village. Right now, realistically, with the one truck, we can't do the entire village. So we're kind of just, projecting it out. We didn't want to bring it in the first year because it would just drive up the rates that much more, so.
My next question is about the capital assumptions. I see a couple projects on there. I'm assuming those are currently in our current plan for our master plan. I'm assuming once Kimberly Horn completes their plan, will there be new projects identified as well?
Likely.
Again, these are carryover from the last plan. We didn't obviously do all of the sub-basins. There was more than 8 sub-basins. We couldn't do all 8 in that 5-year period. So this is kind of rolling over, and they may identify more potential projects, yes.
Got it. Thank you.
We'll just note real quick on those projects. You have been very successful in recent years with grants for funding stormwater projects. You don't have any secured at the moment, so we had a program to fund them with village funds and opportunities. If you get grants, that would free up a little bit of cash under these rates to potentially do other things or do the vac truck sooner.
Like trees?
However the council wishes to spend any money.
Thank you. Councilmember Cody?
Thank you. On the second item on the summary slide, it said consider SRF funding for capital plan. What does SRF stand for?
So SRF is a state revolving fund program that the Florida Department of Environmental Protection administers. And really what the state does is they offer low interest subsidized rate loans to municipalities that go through the process. There's a period of submitting applications. They do reviews twice a year, and they have funding set aside for different communities who apply and different types of projects. And I believe you'd be under the clean water infrastructure loans. And again, they have very subsidized interest rates. As of a few years ago, they were even doing some 0% interest rates. They've started to creep up a little bit, but they're well below market. They're 20-year loans, so pretty well below those 30-year loans that typically are from a revenue bond. Very advantageous funding for the village to consider if the grants don't continue to materialize like they have.
Thank you. Other questions? Vice Mayor?
I also know that the EPA has some clean water funds as well. Would the SRF, is that a separate program from the EPA's grant program, or is it combined?
EPA, it'd be hard to say. They do funnel a lot of things through the state SRF program ultimately, but I don't specialize in grants. But I do know that they try to go through the state programs that are existing when they can. But there are other things like WIFIA loans, which are typically for like larger scale projects. But yeah, there are other opportunities, but a lot of times they try to funnel them through the state.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, comments? Councilwoman? No? Yep, good.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this during the committee of the whole workshop. This is a program I'm incredibly passionate about, mainly because the investments that we make in this program are going to directly impact my generation and the generations to come in Palmetto Bay. Cost of infrastructure is not getting any cheaper. It only goes up in cost. So as we're having the conversation about the stormwater rate, I would like to at least have some discussion about our urban tree canopy program. I mean, I don't know if you all have been outside today. It's not very pleasant to be outside at this time of year, and trees make it just a little bit better. And it's also, whatever investment that we put into trees as a community, we get that back in property values as well quite a bit. And part of the reason why Pinecrest is a little bit more valuable than us in terms of their real estate market is because they have a fully developed tree canopy, and the investments that we can make as a village into that are critically important. And to me, I'm willing to support whatever rate we need to essentially fully fund these programs because, again, cost of infrastructure doesn't get cheaper, and this is an incredibly important program for our village to adopt. So I'd just like to know where the council's at on the trees specifically. So thank you.
Councilmember Cody?
I have a question. When we set the rate for this, is there any supermajority requirement, or can we do it that based on a simple majority?
No, I don't know. I think it's a majority, but I will double check unless the Raftellus people know off the top of their head. I've never had that question asked of me, and I think it's always just been unanimous when I've dealt with it in other places.
Utility. Yeah. Utility user fees typically do not have any supermajority requirements like impact fees.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Fiore?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, usually in years past, I would tell my colleagues here, be very pragmatic, yeah, how about $7? Don't ask where it comes from, but I try to find a consensus. But I agree with the Vice Mayor in this case. I think we have, as what I just stated earlier, we kind of have a duty. It's a infrastructure. I know when the job is done, and Dio can say this, the residents are very happy when it's finished. So I would, if that's the rate, that's fine with me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you. And as I mentioned to you, Mr. Manager, and to my colleagues at the Committee of the Whole, my goal is to make sure the rate is set. What programming goes into it is, whether we're doing premium, I don't remember if that's what you called it, or basic, or parts of premium, all the basic stuff and parts of premium. I would actually be so bold as to make a recommendation of taking the maximum of what you all have brought, which is $13. That would be something that I would support. I think this is, we kind of, I was on the council when we raised it from 3 to 5. And, you know, there was a lot of, what you saw this evening, it was the exact same thing then. You know, a lot of back and forth and discussion and not wanting to charge the maximum. My goal, as I have stated previously, is to leave the village in the best financial health, even given the uncertainty of the time. So I see the Vice Mayor nodding for 13. I want to give you a little bit of happiness tonight, Mr. Manager. I see Councilmember Cody saying the same thing. I don't know where my colleague here is.
Maybe you mistook my remarks earlier.
I got excited, and I just
Yeah, well, don't
went
get
with it.
excited. I said the rate of 850 was okay, so I'm good with the 850. Is that what you recommended?
For the first year, 850.
Okay, well, there's only 1 year there's no year for me. That's just
100 days.
100 days.
Days.
That's it. So, no, I'm good with that number, 850, thank you.
You know, there's this thing when you get elected, everyone writes about what they're going to do in the first 100 days. Well, we're going to act what we're going to do in the last 100 days, and hopefully it'll be good. It'll be good stuff. I think you've got 3 individuals at the very least. I don't know what Councilwoman Mattson, she doesn't. Okay.
Well, I supported the last stormwater fee increase. I think there's infrastructure, controlling flooding, protecting residents' property and homes. I've always been for that. I mean, I'm all into the environmental aspects of our village, and this is a stormwater tax that will protect every home. So, yes. And I would also like to include the tree aspect of it as well, because that's such an important aspect of stormwater and flooding. It really is. And you came up with a terrific program, and I'm ready to support it. So, yeah, to me, this is one of those things like police services, infrastructure. Those are the basic job of government, in my opinion.
So if I heard you correctly, you didn't mention the number 13, but I could feel the vibe of 13. Is that, okay. So you've got 4 individuals that have said they would support 13. Just reminding you of that, that's all. Yeah. Okay, thank you for the presentation, thank you, Dio. Okay, is there anything else, Vice Mayor, question?
Yeah, I mean, with the 13 specifically, I mean, are we going to do the program, or are we just going to go straight to 13? Because I think specifically with trees, I mean, the earlier you plant them, the better. So if there's willingness on the council to go to 13, I'm more than willing, as long as the trees are in there. And I think it's a critically important thing. And I would just point out that our stormwater ordinance would just need a small update to authorize the expenditure for trees. If the council is willing to do that, I'll bring that in the same meeting as well. And for the full program that I presented at the CAL, I'm happy to just punt that to December. So I just wanted to see if there's consensus for me to
Why
bring that.
December, Mark, why? Why December?
Because that's
Why?
for the program itself, that's the new council, so.
I'm kidding, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. Yeah, so I think that's a yes. All right. Anything else? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Or are there more comments? Is motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, good night, Palmetto Bay. Directors, thank you so much.